Chapter 563, Defeat, Desperate Situation. Chapter 563, Defeat, Desperate Situation. Heavens, what's that? A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. The paragons of the North region were shocked. None of them had witnessed such a situation up till this point of their cultivation. That figure that was more than 100 feet tall stood in the middle of the battlefield like a towering godly being, exuding its might in all directions with a torrential aura. Against this godly being, Wuya was like an insignificant ant. If not for his ancient phenomenon, Wuya's aura would have been overwhelmed by the monster incarnate of divine Phoenix Island completely. So, you're just a beast. Wuya circulated his golden core with all his might, and the power of his phenomenon surged. The glass divine light glowed brilliantly. Although that ancient phenomenon merely released a rainbow-colored light and did not seem like it had any monumental aura, its might was extremely frightening. Any cultivator that was touched by that rainbow light would have their flesh and blood crystallized, turning into ice-cold figures without any life. A single touch could cause them to shatter into pieces. Most spirit weapons would shatter on the spot if they were engulfed by the rainbow-colored light. Even supreme-grade spirit weapons would not be able to escape that fate. The fact that it was called a divine light was proof of the might of this ancient phenomenon. Its godly authority could purge all ghosts and deities. Normally speaking, even pure-blooded ferocious beasts wouldn't be able to withstand the killing power of glass divine light. However, Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. That was the foundation left for him by Dugu to establish ground in the cultivation world, as well as his stepping stone to enter the cultivation world. That supreme demon classic was the exact reason why Zimo was able to overwhelm so many paragons and fend off the sealers beneath the human emperor's palace before eventually entering it. Although he had only just formed his inner core, the terrifying aspect of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness had already been revealed. The 7 ancient demon kings surrounded him, and he was shrouded by a scarlet demonic chi that was extremely thick. Demonic chi made contact and clashed repeatedly against the glass divine light. Buzz, buzz. A jarring sound echoed from the center of the battlefield. 2 entirely different powers were corroding one another mutually without relenting. A terrifying shockwave started spreading through the void. Tabafeng, Murong Wushuang, and everyone else were shocked, retreating hurriedly. Some of the cultivators who could not dodge in time and were implicated by the energy shockwave produced by the clash of the 2 powers exploded and died on the spot. The center of the battlefield had turned into a forbidden area because of the fight between 2 monster incarnates. Roar! The 7 ancient demon kings roared deafeningly at the same time. Some of the cultivators who were closer were stunned by the noise, fainting on the spot. Demonic chi rumbled with a torrential ferocity as the 7 ancient demon kings opened their gigantic mouths. Their teeth were filled with sticky saliva and they bit toward Wuya. Poof, poof, poof. A rainbow light shot forth. Wuya had a glass-like body that was flawless and transparent. Surrounded by the rainbow light, he was like a blazing sun. One after another, rainbow lights streaked forward like swords with extremely sharp edges. Countless swords tore through the thick demonic chi and cut the 7 ancient demon kings, wounding them all over. The demonic chi shrouding around Zimo had thinned considerably. In the end, Wuya had still gained the upper hand in this fight between 2 monster incarnates. No matter what, he was at perfected golden core realm. However, Zimo was only at early stage inner core. As the number 1 perfected being of the North region, Wuya noticed the minute change in the tides and would naturally not let such an opportunity slip. Kill! He hollered and his aura grew fiercer. The glass divine light in his hands converged gradually before forming a sparkling saber. Slay! Swash! Accompanied by Wuya's roar, the glass saber tore through the demonic chi surging around Zimo and sliced off the head of the bovine demon king. With that, the demonic chi thinned by a portion. Again! Wuya bellowed with an overwhelming aura. The stone bear demon king's body was cut into two and dissipated. Once again, the demonic chi thinned. Slay, 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 slay. Wuya released 5 consecutive slashes, and the remaining 5 ancient demon kings were cut down by the glass saber in an extremely miserable manner with their limbs splaying. In the blink of an eye, the 7 ancient demon kings surrounding Zimo had been dispersed by the glass divine light. The demonic chi was now extremely thin. With the loss of his demonic chi's protection, no matter how unparalleled Zimo's body was, he would definitely not be able to withstand the might of the glass divine light. The situation was extremely clear right now. Sigh, he's still slightly inferior at the end of the day. Mu Dongqing sighed. Indeed, it's true that the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island does not stand much chance of victory against the number 1 perfected being of the North region after fighting with so many paragons and depleting his spirit energy. Furthermore, the two of them are a few levels apart in terms of cultivation realm. Bai Yuhan nodded. If he's at perfected golden core realm, it might be hard to determine the victor of this fight. Double phenomenons. Not only that, those were lost primordial phenomenons. To think that he would die just like this. Someone from Divine Phoenix Island who wants to come onto Tianhuang mainland and fight for the vermilion fruit is bound to be targeted by everyone. That's right. This man is a demon. It's nothing even if he dies. Zimo had killed too many paragons of the North region and have already sown deep feuds with the major sects and factions of the North region. Nobody was hoping for him to be victorious. Ha 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 ha. When he saw that the situation was set, Wuya reared his head in laughter and declared loudly, "A beast is a beast at the end of the day. Do you really think that you're my match just because you suppressed many paragons beneath the human emperor's palace?" Wuya took a step forward and slashed with his saber. Zimo grit his teeth tightly and his inner core circulated fanatically. The remaining demonic chi shrouding him condensed into a shield. Bang! The shield exploded. Zimo let out a dull grunt. The power of the phenomenon ate into him, and that massive body of his exploded on the surface, creating a series of cuts that looked terrifying as fresh blood gushed out. You can't hold on anymore? Wuya had an excited expression and a cruel glint shone in his eyes as he lunged forward once more. Zimo raised his right hand with the divine phoenix bone and punched forward to defend. Clang! The sound of metal clashing echoed. Although the glass divine light was not shattered by the divine phoenix bone, the rainbow light spilled everywhere. When Zimo's bare arm was exposed to it, it turned into pieces of crystallized flesh. The color on Zimo's face drained as he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. While the divine phoenix bone was unyielding, it was not omnipotent. He could not control the divine phoenix bone. He could not release its true strength as well. Die! Wuya hollered once more domineeringly. The glass saber descended from the skies, looking as though it was about to cut through the void and sever all life before it. Am I going to be defeated just like this? Against the suppression of that formidable power, Zimo's features looked somewhat contorted as he howled from the depths of his heart, "I'm not willing." On the surface, this was a clash between two paragons. However, in reality, this was more like a face-off between immortals and demons. It was more like a fight between the legacy of Daiyu and the ancient super sects. There were some things that Daiyu would definitely not say to Zimo given her personality. However, she had already expressed her intentions through her actions. Since fate did not allow you to attain immortality cultivation, I'll alter fate for you. Since Iridescent Cloud's palace doesn't want you, I'll impart to you my skills and allow you to be stronger than all the successors of the super sects in this world. This was Daiyu's pride. It was now also Zimo's pride. Chapter 564, Burst. Chapter 564, Burst. 8 years ago, Daiyu transformed into a butterfly and left without a trace. However, Zimo had never felt lonely during this period of time. Perhaps, Daiyu had been keeping watch of him from some other world. Furthermore, Su Zimo was convinced that his future would not lie in Tianhuang mainland. There would come a day when he would finally break through this void before him and travel to that foreign world in his pursuit of Daiyu. He wanted to go and meet her. He wanted to arrive before her and tell her, "I'm here." It did not matter if the path ahead was filled with obstacles. It did not matter if it was an endless hell before him. It did not matter if countless strong foes wanted to stand in his way. Nothing could waver Su Zimo's determination. At the thought of Daiyu, Su Zimo was filled with a sense of courage. When he thought about her, he could not help but recall her domineering and imposing methods. How could the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness lose? How could Daiyu lose? How could I lose? I'm not willing. Su Zimo reared his head and roared into the air. With the circulation of his inner core, his blood chi rose, his tendons and bones echoed together. His blood marrow gushed and his organs trembled. Body tempering, tendons transformation, bones strengthening, marrow cleansing, organs refinement, orifice clearing, core formation. All 7 sutras flowed through his mind. A series of strange sounds came from that body that was 100 feet tall. It seemed as though someone was chanting those sutras relentlessly. With the support of that sound, the turtle-like cracks on Su Zimo's body healed at a speed visible to the naked eyes. The gradual gathering of the sound seemed to have triggered something and released a shuddering energy. Su Zimo's eyes lit up as he welcomed the incoming glass saber. The demonic chi in his body surged, and he charged forward instead of dodging or retreating. "You're asking for death?" Wuya's gaze was vicious as he slashed forward savagely, gripping his glass saber with both hands. Boom! Su Zimo threw out a punch. At the same time, a gigantic demon beast could faintly be seen from the rumbling demonic chi behind him. It looked like a blood-colored butterfly that was vaguely discernible. There were 2 bright, round moons etched on the wings of the butterfly, resembling a pair of indifferent eyes. Su Zimo punched forward. The blood-colored butterfly did not move at all, and those moon-like eyes on its wings flashed. An incomparably strong power cruised through Su Zimo's body, bursting instantly along with his fist. Boom! The saber collided against Su Zimo's fist with a resounding bang. Wuya's expression changed once again, and from the depths of his eyes, a hint of panic and fear could be seen. Right in front of everyone, the glass saber in Wuya's suddenly exploded. The rainbow light dispersed. Wuya's golden core phenomenon had shattered entirely. Shuddering, Wuya choked and could not help but cough out a mouthful of blood, as though he was struck by thunder. All the paragons of the North region exclaimed. Everyone witnessed the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island fall into a desperate situation where he could die at any moment. Yet, for some unknown reason, he suddenly gave off a burst and destroyed Wuya's golden core phenomenon instead. In the blink of an eye, the tides had reversed. The faint blood-colored butterfly behind Su Zimo had disappeared by now. However, without the protection of his golden core phenomenon, Wuya was definitely not a match for Su Zimo in his demon form. Boom! Su Zimo strode forward and extended his massive palm, crushing down in an encompassing manner. Wuya did not have time to dodge and could only raise his arm to defend reluctantly. Bang! A dull sound of defeat echoed as the 2 of them clashed. Wuya merely felt a sharp pain run through his arm, and instantly, he was drenched in cold sweat. Su Zimo did not give him a chance to catch his breath at all. Both of them were rare prodigies in terms of melee combat and would naturally not give up on such an opportunity. He threw yet another punch down. It seemed like a supreme gigantic seal that was smashing down from the heavens, about to quake the mountains and ground. Boom! Wuya could only prop up both arms to receive the blow. Shuddering, he retreated once more. Yet again, he coughed out a mouthful of blood that was now already blackish. His organs were shaken, otherwise, his blood would have definitely been red. At that moment, Wuya could no longer feel pain in both arms. They were numb by now. Zimo was extremely precise in his timing such that Wuya did not even have the time to withdraw weapons, talismans, or elixirs. If this continued, both of Wuya's arms would be snapped by Zimo within a few rounds. The two of them were extremely close. Wuya could clearly sense that Zimo's breath also carried a hint of blood stench. This meant that Zimo was already significantly injured through this battle. Right now, both of them were at their limits. If he were to fight to the end, he might still be able to win. However, Zimo's aura was way too overwhelming and sharp at the moment. After enduring a few hits repeatedly, Wuya had already given up on the thought of fighting Zimo to the end completely. He could not die. He was less than 100 years old. He was the number one perfected being of the North region. At such a young age, his future had unlimited potential. As long as Wuya wanted to, he could even transcend to the nascent soul realm. Of course, there was no way he could do his breakthrough in such an intense battle. The ascension from the golden core to the nascent soul realm was a leap in quality. Even if he was the peerless monster incarnate of paragons, he could not guarantee a 100% success rate. Breaking through on the battlefield was equivalent to committing suicide. Even without outsiders interfering, a single distraction was enough for them to perish. Suddenly, Wuya hollered, "What are you guys waiting for? This beast's blood chi is drained, and he's only putting on a strong front. A simple attack from everyone together is enough to kill him here." That single statement proved that Wuya had lost. The reputation that he gained over many years was instantly destroyed at this moment. However, compared to his life, Wuya could not care any longer. As long as he stayed alive, he could get his hands on the vermilion fruit and everything that Zimo possessed. His combat strength would definitely be raised yet another level. At that time, he would even have a high chance of entering the top 10 of the phenomenon ranking once he enters the intermediate ancient battlefield. Perhaps, he might even be able to compete against Jian, the number one of the previous phenomenon ranking. He was going to personally retrieve the reputation and dignity that he lost today. Nobody made a move. Even the masked man who accompanied Wuya did not move, watching everything with a cold gaze. He had his own selfish reasons as well. Initially, there was no chance for him to make a name for himself with Wuya riding over him. He could never get more resources in the sect compared to Wuya. But now, if Wuya were to die with the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island severely injured, there would be a high chance he could be the last standing victor and get his hands on all the treasures. There were only two reasons why everyone else did not move either. On the one hand, the paragons of the North region still had a trepidating fear after being beaten by Zimo. On the other hand, they were still observing at the side. In a fight between two tigers, one was bound to get hurt. The wisest decision was for everyone to observe the battle from afar. Right now, it was not the best opportunity to strike yet. Taba Feng, Murong Wushuang, and the others were expressionless, but they gloated internally. The fight for the vermilion fruit had been tumultuous up till this point, and now, yet another change had happened in the situation. Initially, it was already extremely fortuitous if they could survive, and there was no chance for them to get their hands on the vermilion fruit. But now, the tides had reversed. Any of them could end up as a big winner. Chapter 565, Fall of Wuya. Chapter 565, Fall of Wuya. The old man from Glass Palace stood in the pavilion expressionlessly with his hands behind his back, gazing in the direction of the great Jian ruins with an indifferent stare. Although he looked scrawny, as though a gust could blow him over, none of the nascent souls present inside and outside the pavilion dared to move. There was no longer any meaning to the vermilion fruit fight with Wuya's appearance. In everyone's opinions, the lives of the paragons of the North region were now decided by fate. The astute and sharp cultivators who chose to leave and give up on the vermilion fruit fight would be considered logical. If anyone wanted to challenge Wuya because of the vermilion fruit, they would be committing suicide. The nascent soul of Duanmu clan had a grim expression. Duanmu Kong was the golden core with the greatest potential in the Duanmu clan in 500 years, overwhelming all over cultivators of the same realm. To think that he would be killed by Wuya. Suddenly, the entire fight for the vermilion fruit seemed meaningless after knowing that Wuya had arrived. That was because everyone knew the outcome of the fight. It was no wonder why the paragons of the North region would suffer such an immense defeat. It was no wonder why even paragons of the 10 upper sects and 4 gentry clans fell one after another. It was no wonder why the situation could not be contained even with the appearance of the successors of the 2 ancient aristocratic families. Right now, everything was clear. It was all because of Wuya. The many nascent souls remained silently, awaiting the final outcome. All of a sudden, the old man from Glass Palace, who was initially standing with his hands behind his back, frowned. Swiping his shriveled hand across his storage bag, he withdrew a destiny talisman and gazed at it. The radiance on the destiny talisman shimmered, as though it had received an immense blow. The old man from Glass Palace narrowed his gaze, and a cold glint could be seen in his hazy eyes. The young master seems to have met with some trouble. Could there actually be a paragon in the North region who could challenge the young master? The moment that thought crossed his mind, the destiny talisman in his hands flashed repeatedly. After a momentary pause, the radiance on the destiny talisman dimmed gradually. The old man from Glass Palace was stunned. This was no longer any ordinary trouble. It seemed like Wuya was undergoing some unprecedented danger and could fall at any moment. The abnormal reaction from the destiny talisman attracted the stares of other nascent souls as well. Suddenly, a stir broke out from the crowd. What's going on? That destiny talisman belongs to Wuya? It should be. The old man seems like he's really concerned. Who in the North region could pose a threat to Wuya? I'm not sure. The old man from Glass Palace clutched the destiny talisman with an unpredictable expression. After a moment of hesitation, his eyes flashed with conviction as he declared coldly, "A nascent soul must have infiltrated the great Jian ruins. Otherwise, given Wuya's strength, even if all the paragons of the North region joined forces, none of them would be a match for him." Indeed, that was possible from Wuya. However, it was not exactly possible for a nascent soul to infiltrate the great Jian ruins. All of the nascent souls were gathered here, and their spirit consciousnesses surveyed the surroundings. There was no way a nascent soul could have sneaked past them, avoiding detection. It was obvious what the old man from Glass Palace meant by saying that. "I've got to see who would dare interfere in the fight for the vermilion fruit." The old man from Great Jian ruins soared into the air, turning into a streak of light that burst towards the Great Jian ruins. The other nascent souls were already impatient to begin with and wanted to check out what was going on in the Great Jian ruins. Countless nascent souls could vaguely sense that the situation was not as simple as they had imagined. Countless figures soared into the air. In the center of the ruins, the fight between the 2 monster incarnates was still ongoing. Wuya was drenched in sweat and retreated continuously, panting in a wretched state. Zimo was not in a great state either. Many paragons could clearly sense that Zimo's movement was getting more sluggish and his blood chi was drained. From the initial height of 100 feet tall, he was now only 2 meters tall. He was at the limits of his stamina. Even so, he did not have any intention of stopping. Zimo's eyes shone viciously. Even with his inadequate stamina, he was still suppressing Wuya with his aura. Every single punch landed with his full strength. Wuya had a menacing stare as he snarled, "Beast, can't you tell that everyone is watching with coveting eyes, trying to reap the rewards from our fight? Even if you kill me, you'll be killed mercilessly." "Heh," Zimo sneered, revealing a set of pearly whites as he replied coldly, "For calling me a beast, I'll slaughter you first before thinking about anything else." "You're a lunatic," Wuya cursed. His hair was disheveled right now, and he no longer carried the air as the number 1 perfected being of the North region. Snap! Zimo threw yet another punch. Instinctively, Wuya raised his arm to defend, and the sound of a snapped bone could be heard. Pissed, Wuya gasped from the pain, and his expression changed starkly. He had cultivated the glass mental sutra constantly, and his body was not weaker than weapons a long time ago. He might not even be hurt if he was struck by a supreme-grade spirit weapon. But now, his arm was broken by this monster incarnate of divine Phoenix Island. The snap of his arm shocked him greatly, and he almost fainted from the pain. Naturally, his movements turned more sluggish as well. Zimo's eyes lit up. There was no way he would give up on an opportunity as such. Closing in domineeringly, he arrived before Wuya in a flash. Ah! Wuya howled and exerted the last of his strength, thrusting the only elbow that was left fiercely towards Zimo like a gigantic spear. Wuya could sense the aura of death. This was his final gamble before his death. Throughout history, there had been countless cultivators who gained the advantage the entire time, only to be murdered in retaliation at a critical moment. Even with his stamina exhausted, that single elbow thrust was definitely enough to create a gigantic hole in Zimo's body. At that time, both of them would stand an equal chance at victory. Unfortunately, Zimo seemed to have predicted it. The moment he arrived before Wuya, with a distance of less than a feet, Zimo's body suddenly turned flexible. Like an anaconda, he wrapped himself around Wuya's body. That move was extremely unexpected. Right from the beginning, Zimo's attacks had always been tough and unyielding. But now, with that sudden change, Wuya's final gamble missed. At that moment, Zimo took a deep breath with his body wrapped around Wuya. To the many paragons, it seemed like there was truly an anaconda that was coiling itself around Wuya's body. It breathed in and its body expanded as it reared its head and hissed, as though it wanted to devour the sun and moon. Anaconda coil. That was a killing move from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. It was a move that exemplified the limits of the flexibility of one's tendons. Pang, pang, pang. Zimo's body sounded as though an ancient god of war was strumming a bow. Unable to move at all, Wuya opened his mouth and a weird ee sound echoed from the depths of his throat, as though he was trying to breathe. One of the reasons why anaconda coil was a killing move was because it could suffocate someone. Wuya's eyeballs were bloodshot and bulged out as his face turned a frightening shade of purple due to the prolonged asphyxiation. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of bones cracking echoed. Wuya's tendons and bones were snapped by Zimo's anaconda coil. That body, which could be described as perfect, was now contorted in an indescribable state, looking absolutely miserable with completely smashed tendons and bones without any trace of life. Wuya's gaze dimmed and his head tilted to the side, dying on the spot. Chapter 566. Pass Through My Sword. Chapter 566. Pass Through My Sword. Wuya, the once number one perfected being of the North region, who dominated the cultivation world overwhelmingly and was completely unmatched across the same realm. For the past 30 years, although he rarely made an appearance, he was still an invincible existence of the Golden Core realm in the hearts of many major factions and sects of the North region. Nobody had expected this. Nobody thought that Wuya would make a move for the vermilion fruit fight. Less than that, the paragons had not expected that Wuya would be murdered savagely with his tendons and bones snapped by someone else in the great Jian ruins. Gazing at that mighty, burly figure on the battlefield, a surreal feeling surged through the minds of the paragons, and they were overwhelmed by sadness. This was the cruelty of the cultivation world. Even if one cultivated to Wuya's level and possessed that frightening combat strength, they could still be killed mercilessly. No matter how glorious of a past they had, paragons that died would be buried in the sands of time and be forgotten eventually. This vermilion fruit fight had far surpassed initial expectations of the paragons. There were way too many paragons that died. The ground was sprawled with corpses and blood formed rivers. It was too tragic. Furthermore, up till this point, it was still uncertainty who would end up as the eventual victor with the vermilion fruit. There was only one thing that everyone was certain about. From this day forth, there was a new number one perfected being of the North region. At the same time, that newcomer would die soon as well. Everyone could see Zimo's frailness at the moment. Right now, any random golden core could probably take his life. Although the remaining paragons were mostly injured, they looked at Zimo with fervent gazes, wanting to tear him apart. Finally, a cultivator who could not hold it back anymore stood forward. A centipede dies, but never falls completely. Although he could tell that Zimo was already exhausted, that person did not dare to advance and merely hid far away, hollering softly and conjuring a spirit art. Spirit energy surged and condensed into a palm in midair, slapping towards Zimo fiercely. Boom! The spirit energy palm received no resistance and landed viciously on Zimo's body. Zimo grunted dully and his legs wobbled, almost falling to the ground. At the sight of that, the paragons were finally relieved. Fufu. So that's all there is to the legendary number one monster incarnate. There's also a time when he's exhausted. He's nothing but a beast. How dare a beast try to snatch the vermilion fruit from all of us humans? How impudent. Heavenly piercing sword sex paragon wielded his sword and advanced towards Zimo slowly, smirking coldly with a murderous intent. Previously, his chest was pierced by Zimo's saber. Although the wound wasn't deep, he was scheming and seized the opportunity to retreat due to the circumstances. He chose to observe coldly by the sidelines while retaining his strength. During this period of time, with the help of elixirs such as the blood-curing pill, the wound before his chest had mostly recovered. At this moment, all the paragons were wounded and could not release their golden core phenomenons in a short period of time. The only one truly of threat to him was the masked man from Glass Palace. However, heavenly piercing sword sex paragon could tell clearly that the masked man was at early stage golden core. He would definitely have the advantage if the two of them were to fight. The reason why he chose to stand out now was naturally to control the situation and suppress everything so that he could take advantage of the situation. Beast, why aren't you cocky anymore? Clang. Heavenly piercing sword sex paragon withdrew the sword hanging on his waist and slashed forward. A milky-white sword beam flashed by. Instantly, a gash appeared on Zimo's thigh. Although it wasn't very deep, fresh blood seeped out right away. The reason why heavenly piercing sword sex paragon did not aim to kill with that attack was clearly because he wanted to humiliate Zimo and trample on his dignity. Zimo did not move at all, as if he did not even have the strength to dodge. Although his face was pale, his eyes burned brightly in a terrifying manner. He was truly drained after killing Wuya. Furthermore, Wuya was a perfected golden core, the number one perfected being of the North region. He was truly someone with frightening strength and had an extremely terrifying physique after cultivating the Glass Mental Sutra. After the repeated head-on clashes, Zimo had suffered rather serious injuries. Thin tears were appearing on his organs. If Wuya could endure for a little more, he might not have been the one who died. At that moment, Zimo did not retaliate and was merely silently healing up and recovering his stamina. He had the mystic gold silk armor, be it the spirit art of the first cultivator or the slash from heavenly piercing sword sex paragon. Both were external injuries that did not manage to hurt him at the core. Zimo had trump cards left as well. If he were to release them, the entire world would be overturned. When heavenly piercing sword sex paragon saw that Zimo did not retaliate, he turned even more ferocious and continued forward. The sword in his hand trembled and created a flurry of swipes. Poof! Blood sprayed from Zimo's shoulders once again. Fufu! Heavenly piercing sword sex paragon chuckled. His eyes filled with mockery as he sneered, "Why? You don't even have the strength to fight back now?" Zimo merely smirked without replying. Sigh, to think that such a peerless monster incarnate would end up in such a state. Mu Dongqing shook his head and sighed gently, lamenting. Bai Yuhan remarked softly as well, even tigers and dragons have to suffer if they are trapped. This should be a tribulation in his life as well. If not for Wuya, he would have gotten out of this place long ago instead of being humiliated by these small fries now. He had no help at all. If anyone had stepped forth to offload some pressure from him, he wouldn't have landed in such a miserable state. Mu Dongqing sighed once more. Bai Yuhan nodded. That's right. Who would have the guts to stand beside him now and go against the entire North region? What kind of a monster incarnate is this? Just die. Heavenly Piercing Sword Sex Paragon felt uneasy and did not want to drag things out further. Finally, he made up his mind and slashed forward. His sword was aimed for Su Zimo's glabella. If that slash struck, Su Zimo's head would be pierced entirely. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze. Right as he was about to move, he suddenly frowned with a look of confusion. Buzz! The sound of a sword buzzing rang out. An incomparably brilliant sword beam appeared all of a sudden. That sword beam was magnificent and attracted everyone's attention. However, its speed was way too fast. It happened instantly. Nobody could see where the slash came from. Nobody could identify the trajectory of the slash. Nobody could identify the direction of the slash. However, everyone felt the killing intent from that slash. The sword beam dissipated. Suddenly, the battlefield went silent. The atmosphere turned extremely strange. Heavenly Piercing Sword Sex Paragon froze in his steps. His gaze turned dull. After a momentary pause, the long sword in his hand fell, and a thin gash appeared on his throat, turning wider and clearer. Poof! A blood mist spewed out. Heavenly Piercing Sword Sex Paragon fell stiffly forward, dead. The crowd was in an uproar. Countless cultivators looked all around, trying to seek out the person who attacked. There were not many sword cultivators in the North region. There were even less sword cultivators who could master such a terrifying sword technique to be able to threaten the paragon of Heavenly Piercing Sword Sect. Tabafeng and Murong Wushuang glared at a black-robed man in the middle of the crowd with conflicted expressions. They were shocked and surprised, but more than that, they were puzzled. The black-robed man held a pitch-black, sheathed sword in his left hand. Slowly, he strode out from the crowd one step at a time. Surveying his surroundings with a hollow gaze that could not focus, he spoke slowly, "Anyone who wishes to kill him will first have to pass through my sword." Chapter 567, Dugu Jian. Chapter 567, Dugu Jian. Su Zimo did not recognize the black-robed swordsman. He could not understand why this person wanted to help him. However, he once felt an extreme sense of danger stemming from the black-robed swordsman. From that slash earlier on, his gut feeling was verified. That slash happened way too quickly. Heavenly Piercing Sword Sex Paragon did not even get the chance to release his golden core phenomenon before dying on the spot. Where did this lunatic come from? If he's the helper of this beast from Divine Phoenix Island, he might be a beast as well. Everyone should target him. Some sharp cultivators who noticed that the black-robed swordsman did not have any identity badge on his waist assumed that he was an oblivious itinerant cultivator from out of nowhere and started ranting at him. With Su Zimo facing imminent death, there might be many treasures up for grabs. Naturally, all the paragons were coveting that, and none of them wanted to let up. Everyone, let's attack together. It's not as though this guy could cause a storm. A cultivator beckoned and attacked first. With the first came the second. More cultivators were standing out one after another. Instantly, spirit energy surged and sword beams streaked through the void one after another in a bedazzling manner, shooting towards the black-robed swordsman on the black-robed swordsman like an arrow rain. The black-robed swordsman's right hand moved in a seemingly slow manner towards the pitch-black hilt of the sword on his left hand. The moment his right hand made contact with the hilt, the black-robed swordsman's aura changed all of a sudden. His initially lost gaze suddenly gained focus, resembling two extremely sharp swords. When the cultivators who attacked met with his eyes, they shuddered. Some of them shrieked and closed their eyes hurriedly. Unfortunately, it was too late. Two streams of blood flowed down from their eyes in an extremely chilling manner. A single look blinded those people. What powerful sight he possesses. Zimo's heart skipped a beat. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, he had already unlocked his eye orifices and cultivated a pair of demonic eyes with extremely powerful sight. Even the enraged diamond gaze of the Buddhist diamond monastery and the bewitching eye of the fiend sect's pure maiden sect could not affect his mind. However, Zimo's demonic eyes had yet to reach the level of releasing such a terrifying killing power with just a single look. He lamented internally, "I wonder how that person managed to cultivate such a frightening pair of sword eyes." The black-robed swordsman's gaze had always been lost and unfocused, looking listless. Yet, the moment he held his sword, nobody could ignore his killing intent and the edge in his gaze. Buzz. A buzz reverberated through the world. The unparalleled sword beam from earlier on reappeared with a bedazzling radiance. Cling, clang. A metallic sound could be heard. The many flying swords darting over from midair were all shattered. The sword beam flashed for a moment. All the cultivators who attacked fell from midair in succession without a single survivor. The moment they fell to the ground, they were already corpses. Although they were prepared for it, not many paragons of the North region present managed to see the black-robed swordsman attack. By the time the paragons realized what happened, the sword had already returned to its sheath. The black-robed swordsman's right hand returned to his side, slumping naturally as though he had never attacked at all. Right from the beginning, the black-robed swordsman had been expressionless. It was as though the death of more than 10 golden cores could not create any emotion in him, not even a single bit. A deathly silence filled the air. Nobody expected that after the appearance of the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island and Wuya in the Paragon fight, there was still another cultivator that was this frightening that had not attacked the entire time. Who could defend against such a terrifying existence? Dugu Jian, you've gone mad. Tabafeng glared with widened eyes and hollered. Dugu Jian. At the mention of that name, Zimo came to a realization. There were truly not many cultivators with that surname in the North region. Among them, the most famous was the Dugu clan of the 4 gentry clans. However, the cultivator named Dugu Jian before him was way too unlike Tabafeng and the others. Notwithstanding the fact that he did not have an identity badge on his waist, he was not accompanied by a single clansman at all. From Dugu Jian, Zimo sensed a sort of loneliness and desolation, a feeling that he could not fit in with this world at all. It seemed as though Dugu Jian had nothing else in his world apart from that sword. He required nothing but his sword. That mental fortitude was the only thing capable of cultivating such a pair of sharp sword eyes and a sword technique that was this terrifying and lethal. Dugu Jian, that monster incarnate of Dugu Jian is a beast and isn't human. Are you going to represent the Dugu clan and stand on his side? Ouyang Xiaoyu of the ancient aristocratic family asked coldly. I am me. What does it have to do with the Dugu clan? Dugu Jian's voice was calm as he turned around to look at Ouyang Xiaoyu. He was still expressionless as ever. However, there seemed to be a hint of mockery in that hollow gaze of his. He was mocking Ouyang Xiaoyu's inability to understand such a simple concept. I am me. What does it have to do with others? Instantly, Ouyang Xiaoyu was speechless. Murong Wushuang frowned slightly. Looking at Dugu Jian not far away, she could not help but ask, why? Just can't stand it. Dugu Jian replied indifferently. Most of the paragons of the North region were confused. What couldn't he stand? Who provoked him? Murong Wushuang was the only one who sighed gently internally with a conflicted expression. She knew the type of hardships Dugu Jian had experienced as well as the pride in this man's heart. Zimo's current predicament must have struck a chord in that man's heart. He was once abandoned by this world as well. Mocked by countless, attacked by countless, bullied by countless and scolded by countless. At that time, nobody helped nor stood by him. This man had reached where he was relying entirely on the sword in his hand, one step at a time. The reason why he was reclusive was not because he hated the world. It was because this world had once abandoned him. The only thing that stayed by his side the entire time and had not abandoned him was that black sheathed sword in his hands. That was the reason why he couldn't stand it and attacked. He would be equally fearless if he had to make enemies with the entire world, let alone the paragons of the North region. Zimo did not move a single inch. This was an extremely rare opportunity. He had to seize the chance to recover his stamina so that he could escape from this place. There was already nobody in the Great Jian ruins who could threaten him with the death of Wuya. However, Zimo could still clearly sense that danger was approaching. He did not have time to waste. The masked man from Glass Palace seemed to have read Zimo's intentions and strode slowly forward. Since when are those from the Dugu clan allowed to be this cocky? The masked man had a nasty hoarse voice, as though he had suffered immense impact that damaged his windpipe. Scram or die. The masked man glared coldly at Dugu Jian and spat venomously. Dugu Jian was expressionless and silently, merely shifting his gaze slightly. His right hand moved slowly towards the hilt of the black sword on his left hand. Narrowing his gaze, the masked man's hairs stood on end instantly. Buzz. A sword beam flashed. Dugu Jian did not say anything and merely replied with the sword in his hand. Chapter 568. Arrival of the Nascent Souls. Chapter 568. Arrival of the Nascent Souls. The masked man bolted away at an extremely fast speed. He had already vanished from his original position almost at the same time as the arrival of the sword beam. It was entirely silent. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of metal ringing was extremely piercing in the silent battlefield. All the paragons witnessed clearly as a crack appeared on the metallic mask of the man, splitting the mask into two. Clang. The mask fell to the ground, revealing that person's true appearance. Pissed. Many people gasped. Some female cultivators even exclaimed. Filled with grisly wounds, that face was extremely horrifying. It looked nefarious like a malevolent ghost, as though it was eaten away by something. For some unknown reason, Zimo felt an indescribably strange feeling when he saw that face. Sensing the weird stares all around, the masked man had a venomous expression as he howled deeply with an endless hatred surging in his eyes. I'm going to kill you. The masked man strode forward with a torrential aura. Boom. One after another, streaks of rainbow-colored lights appeared behind the masked man with a frightening energy fluctuation that threatened to destroy everything in the world. Ancient phenomenon, glass divine light. Although the masked man's glass divine light was clearly not as terrifying as Wuya's, it was nothing to scoff at as well. After all, that was Glass Palace's legacy phenomenon. Heavenly encompassing swords. Clang, clang. The sound of swords buzzing reverberated relentlessly through the world. A series of sword chis appeared behind Dugu Jian once after another, encompassing the entire firmament as they streaked over with a daunting might. Glass Divine Light was ranked 13 on the previous phenomenon ranking. Heavenly Encompassing Swords was ranked 40 on the previous phenomenon ranking. But now that the two phenomenons clashed, they were on even ground. On the one hand, the masked man's cultivation realm was only at early-stage golden core. On the other hand, the might of Heavenly Encompassing Swords was truly pushed to its limits in the hands of Dugu Jian. In the hands of different people, the same golden core phenomenon would also release a different level of might. Fellow Taoists, if we don't strike now, all of you guys are going to be hunted once that beast recovers. Ouyang Xiaoyu surveyed the surroundings and declared coldly. She had already noticed that Zimo was recovering his stamina and channeling qi to heal himself. The paragons present looked hesitant. However, after exchanging glances, most of them were decided. If they did not give it their all now, it would be hard for a similar opportunity to present itself in the future. Kill. Someone strode forward and growled deeply. Kill, kill, kill. Many cultivators roared in unison with a mighty aura, as though they were bolstering their own courage as well. Flying swords and spirit arts filled the air. There was only a single target, Zimo, who was in the center of the battlefield. Zimo's eyes gradually narrowed with a vicious glint. Clang, clang. Before Zimo made a move, Dugu Jian waved his palm and directed a portion of the heavenly encompassing sword chi in the air to form a barrier that wrapped around Zimo. Bang, bang, bang. The flying swords that struck the barrier of sword chi were repelled instantly. Spirit arts that rammed onto it dissipated right away. In terms of combat strength, the only one who could match Dugu Jian right now was the masked man from Glass Palace. Buzz! A sword beam flashed. Dugu Jian had attacked once more. That slash seemed to transcend the void and arrived before Ouyang Xiaoyu instantly. The green Luan was the first to sense the killing intent and burst in retreat with Ouyang Xiaoyu on it instantly. Poof! The sword beam shot into the green Luan. It let out a tragic howl. Although it was a pure-blooded ferocious beast, it could not withstand Dugu Jian's slash. While that wound was not deep, when the sword chi entered its body, it destroyed all life within it almost instantly. The green Luan was dead. Ouyang Xiaoyu's face was pale as a sheet as she barked hatefully with vengeful eyes. "How dare you hurt my spirit beast, Dugu Jian?" Dugu Jian did not reply. Another sword beam flashed. Poof! A scarlet streak appeared across Ouyang Xiaoyu's chest, and her gaze dimmed gradually. Initially, she was a blessed woman from the heavens, born with fairy-like looks and in an ancient aristocratic family. Any cultivator that saw her would naturally feel a sense of inferiority. There were few cultivators who could bear to attack her. Unfortunately, her opponent was Dugu Jian. In his eyes, Ouyang Xiaoyu was nothing more than an ordinary cultivator. There was no great deal about killing her. The blessed woman of an ancient aristocratic family fell from midair, already dead by the time her body reached the ground. Boom! At the end of the day, Dugu Jian had still used up quite a bit of his focus to divert part of his phenomenon's power to protect Zimo while killing Ouyang Xiaoyu. The masked man seized the opportunity to strike. Boom! An arm flawless as jade tore through the air with a fist that resembled a steel hammer, bursting forth with an extremely alarming might instantly. Dugu Jian's expression did not change. Unable to raise his sword in time, he could only punch in retaliation. Bang! The two fists collided. Snap! The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Dugu Jian's wrist was snapped by the masked man, twisting to an unbelievable degree. Glass Palace was the best versed in body tempering in the cultivation world. Glass Palace disciples, even if they were not Wuya, had extremely strong physiques and frightening melee combat strength that ordinary cultivators could not imagine. However, what everyone truly felt terrified about was Dugu Jian. Even with his snapped wrist, Dugu Jian was still emotionless as ever, as though that was not his hand and he did not feel any pain at all. He was way too calm. Dugu Jian was so calm that nobody could sense any trace of panic coming from him. Despite his snapped wrist, Dugu Jian did not stop at all and instead raised his sword in reverse without giving the masked man a chance to follow up at all. The masked man retreated slightly slower and instantly, a bloody gash appeared on his chest. Poof! Once again, the masked man's expression changed as he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. He could clearly sense an endlessly sharp sword chi surging into his body, trying to cut up his flesh, bones, tendons, and organs. Hurriedly, he channeled his blood chi to suppress it. After spitting out a mouthful of blood, he managed to contain the wound and purge out the sword chi. Although it seemed like he gained the advantage in that exchange of blows, in reality, they were on even ground. The only difference for Dugu Jian with his snapped left wrist was that he wouldn't be able to hold onto his sword sheath with his left hand. However, Dugu Jian's sword technique was completely unaffected and turned even more intimidating instead. A paragon was bound to die with every single attack of his. Both sides continued in the stalemate. All of a sudden, the sound of clothes fluttering through the air could be heard from the distant horizon. A series of incomparably strong auras surged forward, tearing through the air. The auras were wildly berserk, seemingly filled with rage as they sped over. Before they even arrived, an unnerving dominance had already engulfed everyone present. This aura, nascent souls. Even nascent souls are alarmed, and there's so many of them. Instantly, the crowd went wild. Everyone knew that they would definitely fade into the background the moment nascent souls interfered. It was unknown who the vermilion fruit would end up with eventually. That would still depend on the capabilities of the nascent souls. However, there was only one thing everyone was certain of. Somebody was about to die. That person had slain way too many paragons of the North region and had offended almost all the factions of the North region. He was definitely doomed to die today. Chapter 569. Exposed. Chapter 569. Exposed. The might of the gathered nascent souls was horrifying, and all of the cultivators fighting stopped, not daring to act recklessly. The old man from Glass Palace was the first to arrive, and his expression was terribly dark. Although he had already rushed over with all his might after noticing that something was amiss, it was still too late. Wuya's destiny talisman was already shattered on his way here. Who was the person who could kill Wuya? There was definitely no golden core in the North region who could be a match for Wuya. Even if a nascent soul managed to avoid them and infiltrate the Great Jian ruins, wasn't there a chance for Wuya to escape if he could not defeat his foe? That was impossible. In the blink of an eye, the various nascent souls have already arrived. Their eyes were filled with endless shock as they looked at the corpses sprawled on the ground. They had expected this vermilion fruit fight to be a cruel test for the paragons of the North region. However, none of them expected it to be this tragic. Wuya's body laid limply on the ground with its tendons and bones snapped. It was already a meat sludge. His eyes were widened, as if even till the moment of his death, he could not believe that he would be buried in these ruins. Duamukang's body was torn into pieces, and his original appearance could not even be seen any longer. Ouyang Xiaoyu's corpse had a gash on her chest that was evidently created by an expert of the Tao of the Sword. There were way too many paragons that could no longer speak at this point, either as they laid on the ground as ice-cold corpses. The old man from Glass Palace's gaze turned extremely sharp as he surveyed his surroundings, scanning everyone present. When he came across Zimo, he paused slightly. Zimo was extremely calm, and there was no trace of fear in his eyes, even as he faced this many nascent souls. When he sensed the stare from the old man of Glass Palace, Zimo smirked and glared back in return with the same intensity. What happened here? The perfected lord of Taba clan could not help but holler loudly, asking. Taba Fong pointed at Zimo and shouted, "It's all because of him. He's the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island from the ancient battlefield." That's right. He was the one who killed most of the fallen fellow Taoists of the Golden Core realm. The expressions of the nascent souls changed slightly. The monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island. To think that the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island would actually arrive in the North region after leaving the ancient battlefield. It was no wonder. It was no wonder why the paragons of the North region met with such a great calamity. This monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island was truly scary. Even just at early-stage Golden Core realm, he was able to kill the number one perfected being of the North region, Wuya. Who else could be a match for him? The many nascent souls stared at Zimo with somewhat weird gazes. Apart from hatred, there seemed to be something else. It was more like greed. Their gazes resembled the way the golden cores looked at the vermilion fruit. Many of the nascent souls instinctively looked towards Zimo's right hand. There was a rumor in the cultivation world that the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island's right hand contained a supreme treasure, the Divine Phoenix Bone. That was the bone of a divine being. Even void reversions and dharma characteristics would be tempted to get their hands on a treasure as such, let alone nascent souls. The gaze of the old man from Glass Palace flashed. In his eyes, there was far more than the Divine Phoenix Bone to Zimo. This man possessed way too many secrets in his body. There was everything concerning Divine Phoenix Island, the legacy of the Saber Emperor, the secrets within the human emperor's palace. Also, was this monster incarnate a human or demon? How could immortals and demons coexist? The only way to find out about those unknowns was by capturing this monster incarnate. Monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island. Great. The old man from Glass Palace had a cold tone. Withdrawing an antiquated mirror from his storage bag, he said, "Let's see what the true form of this monster incarnate is." When he heard that, Zimo's heart sank. Before he could react, the old man from Glass Palace flung the mirror in his hands in the air. Instantly, a resplendent radiance burst forth in a bedazzling manner. The endless radiance converged into a light column that descended on Zimo. There was an extremely mysterious power in the light column that did not contain much killing power. However, Zimo shuddered and his bones and tendons rang at the same time as his body shrank uncontrollably. His face and features started changing. Under countless gazes, an elegant face was revealed. The burly man with rough features earlier on had vanished entirely. Who is this? Is he the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island? So, the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island is a human. He looks rather refined, like a scholar. To think that such a frail and refined scholar would be so domineering, I truly couldn't tell at all. Zimo's heart sank as he heard the discussions. He knew that he could not hide everything anymore. Even when he saw so many nascent souls arrive, Zimo could still maintain his composure. However, he truly had not expected that his true appearance would be exposed by a mirror. In the cultivation world, there was a dermic weapon to deal with demons known as the Demon Revealing Mirror. Although the Demon Revealing Mirror did not have much killing power, it could expose the true appearance of demons and expose all their disguises. Despite his endless precautions, Zimo had missed this out. With this mistake, all his efforts had gone to naught. Zimo merely felt his limbs go cold. In fact, he even felt devastated. Even if he could escape from this place, he wouldn't be able to survive for long. He could not return to Ethereal Peak. Otherwise, Ethereal Peak would be destroyed because of him. It was even more so for the Yin country. Otherwise, Yin country would be annihilated. While the North region was huge, there was nowhere he could hide. It was even less possible for him to escape from the North region. At Golden Core Realm, even if he were to sprint day and night without eating or drinking, it would take him hundreds of years. Furthermore, he would have to deal with the hunt from various major factions and sects. As long as the matter of his immortality and demonic double cultivation was revealed, nobody in this world could protect him. From this day forth, Zimo would have to take on the world as his enemy single-handedly. Most of the cultivators present had not seen Zimo personally before. However, in the vast crowd, there were some cultivators who shuddered with looks of disbelief. They were so shocked that they nearly exclaimed, "It's him! To think that it's him!" Mu Dongqing was astounded and could not help but murmur to himself. Bai Yuhan clutched her cherry lips with a disbelieving expression, unable to speak at all. At that moment, both of them finally understood something. It was no wonder why Zimo was able to cultivate to the legendary Extreme Foundation Establishment Realm, the second person after the human emperor to do so. That was because he was the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island and had entered the human emperor's palace. "So, it's you." Blaze Columbus Valley's Wang Yan's eyes lit up as he recognized Zimo immediately. A month ago, this was the refined scholar that wiped out most of the cultivators from Blaze Columbus Valley, Stellar Luna Sect, and Shadowless Sect, causing them to suffer a massive defeat. It was no wonder why this person also had the Divine Turtle phenomenon. It was because he was the same person from a month ago. Since this person had a double phenomenon, it meant that he did not fight with his full strength a month ago. Today's battle was the example of this man's full strength without holding back. Wait, something isn't right. Suddenly, Wang Yan's expression changed. This man did not fight without holding back today either. A month ago, He had a gigantic seal that was a Khanate spirit weapon. However, that weapon did not show itself today. A month ago, he also had a quasi-Khanate spirit weapon that he used to shoot Qian Sinew of Stellar Lunasect to death. That wasn't shown today either. Just how many more secrets are there to this man? What else does he have up his sleeves? That thought sent shivers down Wang Yan's spine. Chapter 570. Even nascent souls won't be able to protect you. Chapter 570. Even nascent souls won't be able to protect you. After the masked man from Glass Palace caught sight of Su Zimo's true appearance, his first reaction was to freeze up. Thereafter, an endless hatred filled his eyes as he burst into laughter menacingly. Fufufo. Ha 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 ha. His hoarse voice was deep like a baleful ghost from hell. So, it's you. The masked man had a venomous expression as he snarled with grit teeth. Do you recognize me, Su Zimo? Su Zimo? I seem to have heard that name before somewhere. It's a little familiar. A commotion broke out among the crowd. I heard that a disciple from a major sect within the territories of Great Zhou cultivated to the extreme foundation establishment realm and is called the second human emperor. His name is Su Zimo. Oh, that's him. I've heard of him before. I heard that this man was outrageous in the ancient battlefield and obtained the Saber Emperor's legacy. He wiped out Poison Sect single-handedly before killing cultivators of Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect. At that time, the sudden appearance of Divine Phoenix Island's monster incarnate drowned his reputation in the ancient battlefield. To think that they're both the same person. Now that things had come to this, Su Zimo calmed down instead. With a cool gaze, he looked at the masked man slowly, as though he was trying to discover something. Why, you can't recognize me? The masked man laughed. His initially ugly face turned even more frightening. Pei Chunyu? Su Zimo raised his brow. Any Glass Palace cultivator that could recognize him had already perished in the ancient battlefield. There was only a single person whose whereabouts in life and death was unknown, Pei Chunyu. That's right, it's me. Pei Chunyu ground his teeth and spat hatefully. It's all because of you that I'm in this state right now. Luckily, the heavens took pity on me and I finally found you. Every single word from Pei Chunyu was filled with an endless hatred, as though he wanted to tear Su Zimo apart. Back in the fog valley of the ancient battlefield, he managed to survive after taking a huge risk and hiding inside the abdomen of a cloud-seeking leopard. At the same time, he was corroded by the strong digestive fluids of the cloud-seeking leopard which distorted his features. During this period of time, there were countless times when he jolted awake from his dreams because of that elegant face, shivering in fear and drenched in sweat. That face and figure had already turned into his nightmare. He could not erase it. Su Zimo, you were domineering and invincible across the same level in the ancient battlefield. I'm sure you've never imagined that this day would come, have you? Pei Chunyu barked coldly. I've sworn countless times to return everything I've suffered 100 times more to you. I'm going to let you suffer a fate worse than death, tormenting you day and night till without allowing you to die or rest. The many paragons felt chills run down their spines when they heard that. Those words could have only been spoken with immense hatred. Su Zimo did not say anything, merely healing up in silence as he recovered his stamina. When he heard Pei Chunyu's words, Su Zimo's lips curled with a mocking expression. He looked at Pei Chunyu like a pitiful insect. That gaze triggered Pei Chunyu once again. Su Zimo. Pei Chunyu bellowed with a menacing expression, gripping his fists so tightly that they cracked. Don't get cocky. I'm not only going to torment you. I'll capture your kin and torture them viciously right before you. I'll let you witness and experience that pain personally. The paragons were secretly shocked. Pei Chunyu had gone insane. The only way to purge his mental demon was if he could kill Su Zimo. Otherwise, he would definitely die from his own demons before long. When he heard that, Su Zimo's expression suddenly turned cold. He did not have much kin left. Be it Su Hong or Xiaoning, they were his Achilles heel, and neither could be touched. Expressionlessly, Zimo said slowly, Pei Chunyu, you were lucky to have escaped the last time. You will definitely die today. Ha 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 ha. Pei Chunyu reared his head in laughter, as though he heard the greatest joke in the world. Because of what? You. Notwithstanding the fact that your stamina is depleted, your spirit energy is drained, and you're at your limits, even if you are in peak condition. So what? Pei Chunyu pointed to the many nascent souls nearby and shouted, There are so many nascent soul seniors around. There's no room for you to be brazen. Monster incarnate? In the eyes of nascent souls, you're nothing but an ant that can be squashed at any moment. Zimo smiled as well. Lowering his head, he twirled his fingers and said leisurely, Do you think that I won't be able to kill you with these nascent souls around? Insolent. The old man from Glass Palace suddenly roared. It was a rich sound that boomed like thunder. Many golden cores shuddered with frozen gazes and fell limply. Zimo's expression did not change, and his body merely swayed slightly. With his double immortality and demonic cultivation, he had a strong physique, and he had even cultivated a powerful vocal secret skill before. Although the sound released by the old man from Glass Palace was powerful, it was not enough to affect Zimo's mind. More than half the paragons of the North region died in Zimo's hands in this vermilion fruit fight. At this moment, there were countless nascent souls staring at Zimo. It was truly ridiculous if he wanted to kill Pei Chunyu right under everyone's eyes. However, Pei Chunyu had to die no matter what. Zimo was extremely clear about that. He knew that if he allowed Pei Chunyu to survive, it would bring about unimaginable trouble for him, Su Hong, and Xiaoning. For other people, this short period of rest would not amount to much difference. However, for Zimo, this was enough for him to stabilize his wounds and recover some stamina. Pei Chunyu, let me tell you one last thing. Zimo had a cold, murderous gaze as he said coolly, Even nascent souls won't be able to protect anyone that I want to kill. Swiping his palm across his storage bag, a gigantic, shiny golden seal appeared in his palm. The Khanate spirit weapon, Coiling Dragon Seal. In just this short period of time, Zimo had already recovered some spirit energy. His dantian circulated and spirit energy surged into the Coiling Dragon Seal. Go! Zimo flung his arm, and the 6 bedazzling spirit patterns on the Coiling Dragon Seal shone as it descended fiercely onto Pei Chunyu. It was frightening, like a blazing sun. Pei Chunyu's expression changed starkly. He had not expected Zimo to be this decisive and attack him even under the watchful gazes of nascent souls. More than that, he thought that Zimo was clearly exhausted earlier on. And yet, Zimo had already recovered to this extent in this short period of time. How strong were his regeneration capabilities? The gigantic seal crushed down, engulfing Pei Chunyu and almost sealing every possible escape path for him. How dare you? The old man from Glass Palace roared and waved his sleeves. Swoosh! Instantly, the sleeves stretched dozens of feet along with the wind, blanketing the heavens as it wrapped around the descending blazing sun in midair. Although the blazing sun was scorching, it could not burn through the sleeves of the old man from Glass Palace. No matter what, Zimo was only at early-stage golden core at the end of the day. He was definitely not a match for a nascent soul in a direct clash. Pei Chunyu raised his head and only felt relieved when he caught sight of the blazing sun wrapped in the sleeves. If not for his sex senior, he might have truly been killed by that gigantic seal earlier on. At that moment, Pei Chunyu experienced another sense of trepidation. Chapter 571. Kill. Chapter 571. Kill. Something isn't right. Pei Chunyu's heart sank. Given Zimo's determination to kill him, how could his attack be this simple? Could Zimo truly be naive enough to think that he could kill him with just a Khanate gigantic seal under the watch of so many nascent souls? That was impossible. Zimo must still have tricks up his sleeves. Instinctively, Pei Chunyu turned his gaze towards Zimo. His pupils could not help but constrict violently right away. Unknowingly, A milky-white gigantic bow had already appeared in Zimo's hands. The bowstring was already drawn. 5 spirit patterns shone on the gigantic bow. If one were to pay attention, they might even vaguely catch sight of a 6th spirit pattern that, although illusory, was extremely blinding. To Pei Chunyu, it seemed like Zimo was hugging a round moon in his embrace at that moment. That round moon was pierced by an ice-cold arrow. Dark black in color, the arrow shimmered with a faint golden glow. Behind that black-gold arrow, Pei Chunyu caught sight of a firm wrist and a pair of brilliant eyes. Those eyes seemed like they were looking at a dead man. The next moment, Pei Chunyu truly sensed the feeling of death. The black-gold arrow was getting closer and closer to him. Pei Chunyu could clearly see the chilling glow on the arrow tip. By now, the elegant face behind the arrow had already turned blurry. The black-gold arrow arrived in the blink of an eye. Although Pei Chunyu had clearly seen it, he realized that he was rooted to the spot, unable to budge at all. Save me. His eyes were filled with fright as he howled from the depths of his throat. It was too fast. The arrow was fired almost the same time as when the old man from Glass Palace wrapped his sleeves around the coiling dragon seal. Such guts! The old man from Glass Palace bellowed in rage. He had not expected Zimo to still have such a terrifying move left after releasing a Khanate spirit weapon. Initially, the black gold arrow only shone with a single gold streak. However, the moment it left the bow, 6 spirit patterns appeared on its body. The light was blinding. Pissed. The paragons in the crowd gasped. An early-stage golden core had actually summoned 2 Khanate spirit weapons. Wuya only had one. Even the nascent souls of the North region were shocked. A Khanate spirit weapon? That was a true killing weapon. The burst killing power from a Khanate-grade arrow fired from a quasi-Khanate gigantic bow was more than enough to kill most of the golden cores present instantaneously. Even a cultivator of Wuya's level might not be able to escape unscathed. Furthermore, Pei Chunyu was only at early-stage golden core. He was more than a single realm weaker than Wuya in terms of strength. Everywhere the black gold arrow passed, the surrounding spirit chi would be drawn into the arrow, leaving a streak of forbidden area made of spirit chi that propagated the black gold arrow to an even faster speed. The old man of Glass Palace wanted to step in and stop things, but he was already too late. Turning into a cold streak of light, the black gold arrow arrived instantly. All of a sudden, the jade pendant on Pei Chunyu's waist seemed to sense something and shone brightly, releasing a mysterious power. An almost transparent barrier was formed around Pei Chunyu. Boom! When the black gold arrow struck this barrier, a deafening bang reverberated through the entire place. Crack! 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 Instantly, a series of cracks rippled through the jade pendant. The jade pendant was an expendable defensive spirit weapon and was extremely rare. This was given to Pei Chunyu by his grandfather on the way here and could defend against the full-powered attack of a peak golden core. Even Wuya wouldn't be able to shatter the barrier formed by the jade pendant in a single blow. However, that arrow pierced the jade pendant right away. The black gold arrow was repelled. Pei Chunyu let out a breath and his eyes were filled with relief. He was saved after that arrow was blocked. That was because with a nascent soul of Glass Palace present, Zimo would definitely not get a second chance to strike again. Suddenly, a black gold glint streaked past the corner of Pei Chunyu's eyes. It looked familiar. Poof! In his moment of distraction, Pei Chunyu felt a sharp pain in his chest. Instinctively, he looked down. His chest was already punctured with a grisly wound and blood spurting out like a fountain. Bam! The sound of a bowstring quivering only reached Pei Chunyu's ears by then. That strike was way too fast. Before the sound of the bowstring arrived, he was already shot by the black gold arrow. When he heard the trembling sound of the bowstring, Pei Chunyu instinctively thought of something. Earlier on, Zimo did not shoot a black gold arrow. He shot 2. The 2 black gold arrows stuck close to one another, front and back. Because the arrows were so fast that they transformed into a chilling streak of light, Everyone mistook that it was only a single black gold arrow. The first arrow tore through Pei Chunyu's barrier. The second arrow was to take his life. The combination of the quasi-connate gigantic bow and connate black gold arrow rendered Pei Chunyu's supreme-grade defensive spirit weapon to paper. That single arrow swept away every trace of life within Pei Chunyu's body. Zimo lowered his arm and put away the moon concealment bow into his storage bag with a calm expression without any emotions in his eyes. That was a display of extreme confidence. If I want to kill you, you will definitely die. It was dead silent on the battlefield, such that a pin drop could be heard. It wasn't just the golden core paragons of the North region. Even the nascent souls had not expected an early-stage golden core to kill a cultivator of Glass Palace right before their very eyes. The process seemed simple and instantaneous. However, the read of the situation, attention to detail and precision of timing were all perfect. Any single delay, and this monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island wouldn't have gotten the chance. The end result was the death of Pei Chunyu. It was exactly as the monster incarnate had said, even nascent souls won't be able to protect anyone that I want to kill. Tabafeng, Murong Wushuang, and everyone else were even more shocked. It was only at that moment when they realized that there was nothing exaggerated about how Zimo single-handedly defeated the paragons of the immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sects beneath the human emperor's palace, nor was it due to luck. This man had way too many tricks up his sleeves. They seemed to be endless. Suddenly, a ridiculous thought flashed through the minds of some people. Could this monster incarnate manage to escape alive? Impossible. Those cultivators denied the thought. There were so many nascent souls here that have long sealed every single escape path of Zimo. No matter if he wanted to fly up above or burrow down beneath, there was no way that man would be able to escape alive. More than 5 kilometers away from the Great Jian ruins, a middle-aged man stood in the air. The man's complexion was a faint golden color and his hands were behind his back, exuding a shuddering aura. Gazing in the direction of the Great Zhou dynasty, his eyes shimmered, seemingly in deep thought. All of a sudden, the middle-aged man's expression changed as he slapped his storage bag and withdrew a destiny talisman before looking at it intently. The destiny talisman was already shattered. Like dust, the fragments slipped through his fingers and dispersed. "At?" The middle-aged man hollered with widened eyes, spewing with killing intent. "Whoever killed my grandson, I'll make sure you are torn into pieces and burned into ashes." Spinning around, the middle-aged man sped towards the direction of the Great Jian ruins in a flash, vanishing at the edge of the horizon before long. Chapter 572, A Great Gift. Chapter 572, A Great Gift. On the battlefield. The old man from Glass Palace had an extremely terrible expression. For this trip, Glass Palace sent 2 golden cores. Notwithstanding Wuya's death, even Pei Chunyu was murdered, and it happened right in front of him. Although Wuya was a golden core, his status in the sect and in the hearts of the elders was much more important than ordinary nascent souls. The sect had raised Wuya as a titular disciple. Naturally, he would be punished when he returned to the sect with news of Wuya's death. Right now, the only thing he could do was to try and make up for it by bringing Zimo back to the sect. That way, he might have a chance of avoiding punishment. "Little beast, let's see how much longer you can maintain your cockiness." The old man from Glass Palace hollered and strode forward, extending his arm to capture Zimo alive. Hee. Suddenly, the perfected lord of Dark Ghost sect sneered sinisterly. "This little beast slewed my disciple. I'm going to take his arm as compensation." Swash. Dark Ghost sect's perfected lord's spirit consciousness shifted and turned into a sinister saber that cut towards Zimo's right arm. His intent to sever the right arm was an excuse for his true motive of getting the divine phoenix bone. Of the nascent souls present, the old man from Glass Palace was not the only one targeting Zimo. All the other nascent souls of decent capabilities wanted to fight for the divine phoenix bone. There was no reason for them to give up an opportunity as such. "How dare you?" The old man from Glass Palace shouted with rage. Hee hee. Suddenly, Duanmu clan's perfected lord laughed. This little beast is ruthless and murdered my Konger. I'm going to kill him and take his corpse back so that I can account to my clansmen. Our Ouyang aristocratic family is not going to let that little beast off either. Ouyang clan's perfected lord remarked coldly. Bullshit. Taba clan's perfected lord cursed. That weakling from your clan was clearly killed by a sword rather than this lad. What rights do you have? In that case, you've got even less rights since your Taba phone is still alive and well. All the nascent souls moved one after another. All of them wanted to take their share of the loot by getting Su Zimo's right hand. Bang, bang, bang. The power of nascent souls collided with a rampant might, filling the skies with resplendent light in a terrifying manner. The frightening power extended and all the golden cores in the vicinity retreated hurriedly in shock, afraid that they might be embroiled in the fight. Su Zimo stood firmly in the center of the battlefield, looking at everything with a faint mockery in his eyes. Everyone, listen to me. There's no need for us to fight with our lives here. Morong clan's perfected lord suddenly said, how about splitting that lad's divine phoenix bone into pieces and divide it evenly? That's good. I agree. Some nascent souls agreed readily. No. The old man from Glass Palace stroked his beard fiercely, and an intimidating power exuded from his seemingly scrawny body. With every single move of his, a rainbow light would glow blindingly. Even dermic weapons wouldn't be able to get close to him. He remarked coldly, I'll see who dares to try and challenge Glass Palace for a treasure today. At that moment, a series of cool sighs could be heard coming from the center of the battlefield. Many nascent souls stopped instinctively and turned their gazes over. Scanning his surroundings, Su Zimo said slowly with a calm expression, I've expected all of you to come, and I've prepared a great gift. Please kindly accept it. Humph. Stellar Lunasek's perfected lord sneered, little beast, you won't be able to escape today even if you've got wings. Let's see what tricks you have up your sleeves. Escape? Su Zimo smirked with a hint of incredulity in his eyes. Everyone, you may have mistaken something. The many nascent souls frowned slightly. All the paragons of the North region hiding far away froze momentarily as well, confused by Su Zimo's words. Su Zimo continued, I'm not the one who has to escape. It's you guys. The hearts of many nascent souls skipped a beat. Before his words were finished, Su Zimo slapped the storage bag on his waist and whisked out a bronze square tripod that was more than a meter tall. The tripod was dull and lifeless, filled with cracks. However, its edges were defined as it stood in the world, as though it wanted to pierce the firmaments and tear the ground asunder. Ha 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 ha. 7 Kills Sex perfected lord froze for a moment, before rearing his head in laughter. He pointed at the bronze square tripod in 7 Kills Sec's hands and asked loudly, You're truly a beast without any brains. Do you really think that you can threaten us with that broken piece of metal? The other nascent souls were relieved at the sight of that bronze square tripod as well, their expressions relaxed and their eyes shining with mockery. No matter what the grade of this bronze square tripod was in the past, even if it was a treasure even beyond dermic weapons, it was already useless right now. If it could not release dermic powers, what was the difference between this tripod and scrap metal? Foo-foo. Su Zimo smiled as well. Indeed, that bronze square tripod was of no threat to nascent souls. However, that might not be the case for the golden lava inside. After it was contained in the bronze square tripod, the golden lava seemed like it was sealed by some power and was calm as water without emitting any heat. Gripping the hind legs of the bronze square tripod with both hands, Su Zimo raised it and spun, swinging it at the nascent souls all around him. Swoosh! The golden lava gushed out, blanketing the skies. When the lava splashed through the void, it burst forth with a shuddering heat that was enough to annihilate everything and incinerate all living beings. At this moment, the nascent souls who coveted the divine phoenix bone were all in the vicinity and none of them could escape from the radius of the golden lava. Contact with the golden lava, even if it was only a single drop, would immediately ignite a shiny golden flame. It burned in the void relentlessly. Given the bodies of nascent souls, they would be burned into ashes within dozens of breaths in the golden flames. If they were drenched by the golden lava, they would be engulfed immediately with no corpse left. The scariest thing was that once the nascent souls were touched by the golden flames, they would not be able to extinguish it no matter how they struggled. Ah, ah, ah. Tragic cries reverberated through the world. In midair, countless figures engulfed in flames streaked through the air. They did not manage to fly far before they fell as a pile of ashes. The battlefield had instantly transformed into a burning hell. None of the nascent souls could avoid this calamity. Even the old man from Glass Palace, who was well-versed in body tempering, only managed to hang on for dozens of breaths before falling to the ground without any trace of life. Only the golden cores who hid far away managed to survive. The golden flames burned furiously. All the stone pillars in the underground palace were incinerated. The underground palace collapsed with countless rocks crashing down and dust billowing. Everywhere the golden lava reached, a massive pit would be burned in its place. The flames surged into the air, illuminating the dark night like day. Against the scarlet golden flares, the monster incarnate's figure was faintly visible, looking like a divine being scrutinizing everything from the flames. It was over. Everything was over. The flames burned through the entire skies. Even the clouds shone tragically beautiful with a scarlet golden shade. The world has changed. From this day forth, the cultivation world of the North region was going to be overturned. Chapter 573, Tribulation of Life. Chapter 573, Tribulation of Life. A lost expression flashed through Zimo's eyes as he gazed at the endless flames around him as well. Although he managed to get his hands on the vermilion fruit, his identity was revealed. It was hard to conclude his gains and losses at the exact moment. Almost all the sects and factions of the North region were implicated in this fire. From this day forth, Zimo would be faced with an endless hunt, and no place would be safe for him in the North region. How difficult would it be if he wanted to escape from the North region? The North region was way too big. Zimo was only at early-stage golden core. Even with his double immortality and demonic cultivation, he would have to take hundreds of years of traveling even in the best circumstances. He would most likely be killed within that period of time. With the conclusion of this battle, Zimo had not only offended Glass Palace, but the entire cultivation world of the North region. No matter what, I've got to get out of this place first. Before long, he calmed down and made a decision. Picking up the coiling dragon seal on the ground, he put it away in his storage bag before donning on new green robes. Hiding in the bronze square tripod, he broke through the layers of flames and escaped into the distance. All of a sudden, another streak of golden light surged through the flames. Sweeping his gaze across that golden light, Zimo could not help but freeze momentarily. It was a black basket that glowed with a golden light, resembling an iron pot with a few holes on top of it. Behind the holes were a pair of black, gem-like eyes that darted around rapidly. Little fox. That sharp little thing still made a decision in the end. She chose to leave that home which she had lived in for dozens of years. She chose to leave her mother and enter the outside world. Although Zimo was reluctant when he left the underground cave as well, he could only let the little fox make the decision for herself. That basket that looked like an iron pot seemed unassuming, but in reality, it could protect her from the surrounding golden flames. Earlier on, even when many nascent souls tried to use their dermic weapons, they were incinerated into ashes by the golden flames. "Come over. I'll take you away from here," Zimo shouted softly. He was the reason why the little fox was willing to leave the underground cave. There was no way he could possibly abandon her in this place. Given her ignorance to the outside world, she wouldn't survive for more than a month living alone. The little fox was extremely obedient, and with a leap, she whisked her fire-blocking basket and slithered through Zimo's robes, climbing to his shoulders with a few steps. Swoosh! A pair of spirit wings appeared behind Zimo. Swoosh! Flapping his spirit wings, Zimo channeled blood chi and sprinted with his full might into the distance. He had not gone far when suddenly, the skies darkened. A sinister voice echoed through the entire Great Jian ruins. Without my permission, nobody is allowed to leave this place today. The next moment, a terrifying might descended, and the countless otherworldly soldiers in the palace instantly dispersed into malevolent chi. The golden cores who were initially watching from afar were shocked and shivered uncontrollably, nearly kneeling on the ground. The pressure was way too immense. Against this intimidation, many golden cores felt insignificant as ants that could be squashed at any moment. That aura was way stronger than that of nascent souls. Even the golden flames that were initially blazing diminished significantly, as though they were suppressed by someone. How scary! Who is it? What's the cultivation realm of this person? Could it be void reversion? A void reversion expert must have arrived. There's no way a void reversion would be interested in a 10,000-year vermilion fruit. There must be another reason for it. Many golden cores exchanged glances as their minds filled with questions. Zimo's expression changed starkly as well with the descent of that might. He felt his footsteps getting more and more sluggish, as though he was trudging through a swamp. However, he had no intention of stopping. The person who arrived was extremely strong. Among the cultivators Zimo had interacted with before, this person's aura was the most similar to the Azura, Yin Beichen. It was a void reversion. Zimo did not know why any void reversion would be here. However, he knew that this was his last chance, and he had to get out of this place as soon as possible. A middle-aged man in luxurious robes descended from the sky with a grim gaze, scanning his surroundings. A wary look flashed through his eyes when he caught sight of the blazing golden flames in midair. When his gaze came across Pei Chunyu's corpse, the hesitation in the middle-aged man's eyes vanished, leaving nothing but an endless, murderous killing intent. Some cultivators could not endure the pressure and recounted the earlier events vaguely. Shifting his gaze, the middle-aged man caught sight of Zimo, who was escaping and could not help but bark coldly with a dark expression. "Little beast, how dare you try to escape in front of me, Dao being Xianyu." Boom! Dao being Xianyu's spirit consciousness moved. A horrifying might descended immediately. With a bang, Zimo's body crashed and slammed onto the ground harshly. The tremendous shock caused the flesh on the surface of his body to rip apart, spurting with blood and adding injuries on top of his original injuries. In the blink of an eye, Zimo transformed into a bloodied person. He could not help but grunt dully and his knees wobbled, almost falling. The difference was too great. This was not merely a difference in terms of strength. It was the difference between two different levels, and it was worlds apart. Dao being Xian, you did not have to make a move at all. Zimo could not even withstand his pressure as a void reversion alone. The little fox was horrified. Earlier on, she was protected in Zimo's embrace. Zimo had defended her from all damage using his body. With his back against Dao being Xianyu, Zimo continued to escape, panting with a hint of blood in his breath and blood frothing from his mouth. However, his gaze was unusually resolute and immensely fierce. With his hands behind his back, Dao being Xianyu traveled through the air and looked down at Zimo, who was escaping down on the ground. Those eyes were filled with mockery and cruelty, as though he was looking at an ant that was struggling to survive. Mr. Imo, when he saw that, Mu Dongqing wanted to say something but hesitated. Nobody expected that the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou would possess such an identity and frightening combat strength. A few years ago, Zimo helped him refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon in the capital of Great Zhou. At that time, he was still a little amateurish. But now, that seemingly frail scholar had already grown to such an extent. Yet, unfortunately, that scholar was about to die. What a pity, sigh. After a long silence, Mu Dongqing gave a long sigh of sadness. No matter what, Su Zimo had once helped him. Mu Dongqing felt pained when he saw the state Su Zimo had ended up in. Bai Yuhan seemed to have recalled something and whispered with a conflicted expression, "If the third princess hears the news about young Master Su's death, she is going to be extremely sad." Mu Dongqing lamented, "At the end of the day, humans can't fight against fate with their own strength. Even a void reversion has shown himself at this point. This should be a fated tribulation in his life such that he can't avoid death." In midair, Dao being Xian, you seem to have lost his patience and interest in toying around. Harumphing coldly, he suddenly descended and blocked Su Zimo's path forward. Right then, something weird happened. Chapter 574, Snapped Wrist. Su Zimo did not stop in his tracks and a milky-white gigantic bow. Chapter 574c. Su Zimo did not stop in his tracks and a milky-white gigantic bow suddenly appeared in his palm. The black gold arrow was already drawn. The bow was like a full moon. The moon concealment bow and black gold arrow. That was the strongest attack that Su Zimo could make given his current state. So what if it was a void reversion? Su Zimo was not going to give up just like that. It was impossible for him to escape under the watch of a void reversion. The only way was if he could kill the void reversion. The light on the moon concealment bow shone brightly, and an endless spirit chi surged into Su Zimo's embrace, as though he was hugging a full moon. The black gold arrow shimmered with a cold, chilling intent, almost fusing into one as the full moon in his embrace. Bam! The black gold arrow was shot forward. The two of them were way too close. The black gold arrow arrived instantly, and even if Su Zimo and Dao being Xinyu were in a different spot, this would have been an extremely difficult arrow to dodge. Dao being Xinyu did not move at all, his eyes filled with mockery as though he was completely unaffected by the cold flash before his eyes. "Is that all you've got?" He raised his palm in a seemingly slow motion, but it tunneled through the void, arriving right in front of the black gold arrow. His palm was sparkling like jade and shone with a mysterious luster. His fingernails were long and slender, as flawless as glass. Curving his finger, Dao being Xinyu flicked gently. Clang! The sound of metal clashing echoed. Under countless gazes, that arrow that was enough to kill Pei Chunyu instantaneously was flicked away by Dao being Xianyu's finger. There were no injuries on his finger at all. He did it extremely casually. Su Zimo's pupils constricted starkly and his heart sank. It was way too scary. The power of a void reversion had far exceeded his imagination. The difference between them was way too great, akin to heaven and earth. A savage glint flashed in Su Zimo's eyes as he suddenly extended his right arm without stopping in his tracks. The right hand that was in possession of the divine phoenix bone gripped into a fist without any fancy moves, smashing down onto Dao being Xianyu's head fiercely. The black gold arrow was the first move that Su Zimo prepared. It was meant to confuse Dao being Xianyu and numb him, causing him to lower his guard. His true killing move was the divine phoenix bone at the back. Given Dao being Xianyu's cultivation realm, he would definitely take the attack of a golden core head-on without avoiding. In that case, there would be a chance to trigger the power of the divine phoenix bone. Su Zimo believed that once the power of the divine phoenix bone was triggered, it would be enough to injure Dao being Xianyu even if it was unable to kill him. However, that might be his only shot at survival. Dao being Xianyu's eyes shone with a deeper mockery. The futile struggle of a trapped beast. Dao being Xianyu sneered. As Su Zimo expected, he reached out with his fist and met Su Zimo's right hand directly. Su Zimo's eyes shone viciously. His inner core and golden core circulated wildly, and his blood chi surged. All his tendons and bones were ringing with the sound of rumbling thunder as his organs shook while his orifices shone with a demonic glint. There were even streaks of bloodshot lights forming around the top of his head. Su Zimo was converging all the power within his body towards his right hand. This single move would determine his victory or defeat. Right as their fists were about to collide, Dao Xianyu smirked and suddenly converted his fist to a palm, choosing not to engage Su Zimo head-on. Dao Xianyu's palm glided upwards gently and avoided the incoming fist, arriving at Su Zimo's right wrist area before gripping suddenly. Su Zimo froze in his tracks. A tremendous repulsion force surged into his body, and he felt like his bones were all going to shatter. Ugh! Su Zimo's expression changed as he grunted. Dao Xianyu's palm gripped his wrist tightly like an iron hoop. The immense power almost crushed his right wrist. It was way too painful. Su Zimo shuddered from head to toe and clenched his teeth. Bead-sized sweat droplets rolled down from his cheeks instantly. With a cold expression, Dao Xianyu raised his chin slightly and looked down at Su Zimo, sneering, "Trying to kill me with your divine phoenix bone?" Foo-foo. Dao Xianyu chuckled gently and shook his head. "You're way too naive." The difference between the two of them was not merely limited to their cultivation realms and strength. In terms of experience and psychology, Su Zimo was even more disadvantaged. Dao Xianyu had already guessed Su Zimo's intentions and did not choose to take the divine phoenix bone head-on, gripping the latter's wrist instead. Su Zimo's right hand had the indestructible divine phoenix bone. However, his wrist was incomparably fragile against the power of a void reversion. Dao Xianyu's change in movement had severed Su Zimo's final hope. Enduring the immense pain on his wrist, Su Zimo glared at Dao Xianyu indignantly with clenched teeth. "Divine phoenix bone." Dao Xianyu lamented, "An ant like you isn't befitting of possessing such a divinely object. From this day forth, the divine phoenix bone belongs to me." Before he finished his sentence, Dao Xianyu exerted slight strength into his palm. Snap! The jarring sound of bones snapping echoed. Su Zimo's wrist was snapped directly by Dao Xianyu. His right hand hung limply, only connected by skin and flesh. Many cultivators winced at the sight of that. As though he could not feel any pain, Su Zimo did not let out any sound at all. His body merely trembled slightly while his features were distorted. Su Zimo's eyes were narrowed, and his expression was extremely cold. Dao Xianyu ignored the hatred in Su Zimo's eyes and merely remarked indifferently, "Little beast, Pei Chunyu is my grandson. Since you took his life, I'll let you suffer in pain and torment for all eternity. Your snapped wrist is just the beginning." Dao Xianyu's voice was like a malevolent ghost from hell and was extremely chilling. Bang! Suddenly, Dao Xianyu extended his feet and tapped Su Zimo in the dantian gently. His kick was way too fast. Even if Su Zimo was at his peak condition, he wouldn't be able to dodge it, let alone the fact that he was now severely injured with his spirit energy drained and blood chi exhausted. Furthermore, Dao Xianyu's palm was locked on Su Zimo's injured right wrist the entire time. Su Zimo could not escape at all. Although that kick seemed like it was slow and gentle, it let out a frightening amount of power on Su Zimo's dantian. It was like a gigantic spear that thrust into Su Zimo's dantian. Su Zimo shuddered and felt a sharp pain pierce through his abdomen, almost fainting from it. A bloodied hole appeared on his dantian, muddied by flesh and blood. Destroyed. Su Zimo could clearly feel that his golden core was shattered by that single kick from Dao Xianyu. His spirit energy drained rapidly. In the blink of an eye, his dantian turned into an empty spot without any spirit energy at all. Su Zimo's body convulsed slightly, and he almost could not stand straight. His face was pale, his eyes went dim, and his breathing turned faint. His cultivation was crippled. The core of a golden core perfected being was their golden core. It could not be recovered once it was destroyed. Dozens of years of tough cultivation was destroyed overnight. For cultivators, there was nothing more cruel than having their golden cores destroyed and their cultivations crippled. It was dead silent all around. The golden cores had various expressions. Some of them gloated, some sighed to themselves while others revealed pained looks. Mu Dongqing and Bai Yuhan had some ties with Su Zimo in the past. At this moment, none of them could bear to continue watching. Dugu Jian lowered his sword eyes and shook his head gently with a look of pity on his face. No matter how much of a monster incarnate Zimo was, how amazing, or even if he had once cultivated to the legendary Extreme Foundation establishment realm with double phenomenons, all of that had now vanished with the destruction of his golden core. Chapter 575. Miserable. Chapter 575. Miserable. Zimo was long drenched in head, and his head was slumped with his black hair raining down. The only thing that could faintly be seen were a pair of frightening eyes. Even with his golden core destroyed and his cultivation crippled, Zimo did not despair. He would definitely take revenge for this as long as he could walk out alive today. He had his inner core despite his shattered golden core. For the past 8 years, Zimo had been cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness day and night religiously. The inner core that he refined was the essence of the first 7 sections of the mystic classic. He could still trample on everyone across the same level by relying on his mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Daobeing Xianyu tightened his grip on Zimo's snapped wrist with a cold gaze. As he looked down at the silently slumped Zimo, he suddenly remarked, "Oh, right. I nearly forgot. You're half a demon as well, and you've also cultivated an inner core." The existence of the inner core could not be hidden from Daobeing Xianyu's spirit consciousness. "Is that what you're relying on?" Daobeing Xianyu laughed, somewhat menacing, before saying slowly, "Even though you're a golden core, I'm not going to leave you any chances. I will let you experience the true meaning of despair." The moment he said that, Daobeing Xianyu extended his right fist. Bang! Daobeing Xianyu punched his right fist savagely through Zimo's chest. When the tremendous power surged wildly into Zimo's body, the first to receive the impact was the mystic gold silk armor. Unable to withstand the burst power of Daobeing Xianyu, a hole appeared through the connate spirit weapon and all 6 spirit patterns dissipated. After breaking through the defensive connate spirit weapon, the remaining power cruised through into Zimo's body. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Blood drained from Zimo's face as he was lifted up before crashing down heavily once more. A series of tears appeared on his inner core. Zimo could no longer feel the existence of demonic power within him. He had lost complete control of his inner core as well. Once again, Zimo's expression turned paler. Even if his inner core was not completely crippled after receiving such an immense blow, the chances of it recovering in the future were extremely slim. In reality, Daobeing Xianyu had intended to shatter Zimo's completely with that punch. However, the mystic gold silk armor blocked a large part of the power. Furthermore, Zimo's tendons, bones, blood, and flesh were extremely frightening to begin with, and he possessed a shocking defense. That was the only reason why the inner core was not pierced entirely with that single punch. Prior to this, Daobeing Xianyu maintained his grip on Zimo's right wrist the entire time. It was only at this moment when he sensed that the situation was deadlocked that he felt relieved enough to release his grip. Daobeing Xianyu had been cultivating for thousands of years up till now, and he was no fool. He would definitely not make a mistake, nor would he leave Zimo with any chances. The little fox was nearly scared out of her wits throughout the entire process. She had never witnessed such cruelty and remained hidden behind Zimo the entire time. It was up till this moment that the little fox realized something and shrieked. No matter how timid she was, she could not bear to see Zimo bullied by someone like this. Sure. She tossed the fire-blocking basket in her paws away. The fire-blocking basket expanded rapidly in midair with 9 golden streaks of light. Surging with an endless killing intent, it shone with a fiery blaze down onto Daobeing Xianyu. A hint of surprise flashed through Daobeing Xianyu's eyes. Against the incoming fire-blocking basket filled with endless flames, Daobeing Xianyu did not dodge nor avoid. Suddenly, he reached out with both hands and scooped in midair. Those terrifying flames did not even manage to burn off Daobeing Xianyu's hair or skin. Reaching through the flames, Xian Yu's arms were completely fine as he pulled the fire-blocking basket towards him for a closer inspection. The glint in his eyes intensified as he nodded to himself. A moment later, he placed the fire-blocking basket in his storage bag. This is a great treasure. It's a pity that you are too weak to be able to unleash the full might of the fire-blocking basket. From this day forth, it belongs to me. Hia. The little fox was agitated. That was her mother's parting gift for her, and she could not lose it. Don't go. Zimo's voice was hoarse and extremely weak. Unfortunately, the little fox was flustered over her fire-blocking basket, and it was too late even if she heard Zimo's call. The little fox dashed forward. Initially, Xian Yu wanted to slap her to death. However, a thought crossed his mind. Fox race. A hint of lust could be seen flashing through Xian Yu's eyes as he changed his mind and swept his hand. Bang! The little fox was repelled and fell into the mud, spitting out a huge mouthful of blood with a stricken expression. She had not formed a core and could not even change her appearance yet. Naturally, she was not a match for Xian Yu. Little thing, it will be extremely easy for me to kill you. It will take nothing more than a single thought. Xian Yu remarked coldly, from this day forth, you are my slave. If you dare to go against me, I'll make sure you suffer. The fox race gave birth to natural seductresses. If he could capture someone from the fox race as a slave to do whatever he wanted with her, he would definitely live his days in bliss like an immortal. The little fox was seriously injured to begin with and was uneasy internally. With Xian Yu's words right now, she knew of her impending fate and was so agitated that she fainted. Xian Yu did not care at all. He had loads of time in the future to train up this fox. Xian Yu's gaze shifted towards the blood-stained cultivator not far away. Their gazes met. Xian Yu frowned slightly. He had to acknowledge that there was still no sign of defeat in Zimo's eyes despite the circumstances. There were way too many powers in the world that could defeat Zimo. However, there was nothing that could make him bow down. Xian Yu frowned slightly. Zimo's gaze made him feel uncomfortable. It felt as if something was not within his control. That's impossible. Xian Yu lamented. That kid's golden core is crippled and his inner core is shattered. By now, he's a complete cripple and there shouldn't be any accidents. Little beast, why aren't you escaping anymore, Xian Yu sneered. Zimo remained silent. With an unpredictable tone, Xian Yu continued slowly, Don't worry, I won't let you die that easily. I'm going to imprison you and slowly torment you while interrogating you about the secrets of your divine phoenix bone and double immortality and demonic cultivation. There's way too many secrets that you are keeping. Zimo smiled as well. I'm afraid you won't get the chance to discover the secrets I'm hiding. A series of sinister sutras flowed through Zimo's mind. Poof! His heart nearly ripped apart and his bloodline surged, blazing in flames. In the blink of an eye, almost a third of his bloodline was burned up. That was the blood escape technique of the fiend sects. Even with his golden core crippled, inner core destroyed, spirit energy drained and demonic power exhausted, Zimo had another type of power within his body, the power of his bloodline. Within a short period of time, Zimo's speed would increase exponentially upon the release of blood escape. Even so, it was still utterly ridiculous to think that he could escape alive from the grasp of a void reversion. Otherwise, Zimo would have released blood escape long ago and escaped from this place rather than wait till this irrevocable state. Right now, he only had a single aim for releasing blood escape, to escape to the Dragon Burial Valley. Chapter 576, Leap. Chapter 576, Leap. After releasing blood escape, Zimo turned to flee without hesitation. When he passed by the little fox who fainted, he scooped her up into his embrace and continued sprinting with all his might. Zimo did not dare to imagine what would happen to the little fox if he abandoned her here. That would be a fate worse than death. His figure transformed into a streak of blood light and sped outside. All the paragons were stunned. They saw that Zimo was a cripple on his last breath, someone who could not even stand steadily. In the blink of an eye, that cripple released such a terrifying speed. Even Dao being Xian Yu froze momentarily, let alone the golden cores who were watching. Although he was a void reversion, a full 2 major realms above Zimo, he was extremely cautious. He only relented his grip on Zimo's wrist after crushing the latter's golden core and inner core. However, Dao being Xian Yu truly had not expected Zimo to still have energy left to escape. Blood escape? His eyes flashed as he recognized the origin of that secret skill immediately. Blood escape was a secret skill from a Jura sect of the Fiend sects and was extremely famous in the cultivation world. It provided a frightening burst power that was far beyond the other escape techniques of the 5 elements. Trying to escape in front of me? You're truly way too naive. Dao being Xian Yu sneered, let's see how long more you're intending to run for. Before his sentence was finished, Dao being Xian Yu gave chase. His speed was even slightly faster than Zimo, who was bursting with blood escape. Zimo might have truly been able to escape alive with blood escape if he was hunted by nascent souls. Unfortunately, he was facing a void reversion. Furthermore, it was a supreme expert of the void reversion realm, a cultivator of Glass Palace. Right now, in Dao being Xian Yu's eyes, Zimo's escape was nothing more than an ant struggling on the brink of death. The distance between the two of them was decreasing rapidly. If not for the fact that Zimo had made a move first, Dao being Xian Yu would have caught up to him within a few dozens of breaths. Many golden cores followed hurriedly. However, their speeds were far inferior compared to Dao being Xian Yu and Zimo, who was in blood escape. Thankfully, there were not many obstructions before them, and the path was clear. The paragons chased while gazing the entire time. By the looks of it, Dao being Xian Yu will be able to catch up to Zimo in less than 100 breaths. That's right. Even with blood escape, that man is only grasping at straws. His death is inevitable. I guess he's just trying to stay alive for every single second possible for now. Mu Dongqing and Bai Yuhan had conflicted expressions when they heard the discussions. No matter what, Zimo was a cultivator of Great Zhou. They even had ties with him previously. In the end, neither of them were as relaxed as everyone else when they saw the state he was in. After a slight chase, Mu Dongqing suddenly exclaimed softly and frowned, murmuring to himself, "This direction doesn't seem right. It seems to be... Could it be? The Dragon Burial Valley." Some cultivators in the crowd noticed something strange and exclaimed. The Dragon Burial Valley was an extremely unlucky place. In the catastrophe 10,000 years ago, the blood of emperors was spilled, patriarchs were killed, and a divine dragon was buried there. In the past 10,000 years, countless experts have made their way into the Dragon Burial Valley to check things out. Eventually, there was no news of any of them, and neither did they return. It was said that even Dharma characteristics and conjoint bodies wouldn't be able to make it out alive. Among them, there were some renowned and famous monster incarnates and supreme experts. In fact, there were even people who regarded the Dragon Burial Valley as the 10th forbidden ground apart from the 9 forbidden grounds. Suddenly, all the paragons read Zimo's mind. Since he knew he was going to die, he might as well leap into the Dragon Burial Valley so that Dao being Xian Yu gets nothing at all. Dao being Xian Yu's expression was grim in midair. Clearly, he had read Zimo's mind as well. His blood chi surged and his dermic powers gushed. By now, his speed was already at its limits, and there was even a buzzing sound coming from the voids. The vermilion fruit was born in the depths of the Great Qian ruins and was extremely close to the Dragon Burial Valley. Now that Dao being Xian Yu was pursuing Zimo and his blood escape with full speed, the two of them arrived at the location of the Dragon Burial Valley before long. Not far ahead, a gigantic ravine split the entire Great Qian ruins into two. The ravine was dark and chilling, exuding a shuddering aura. From midair, it looked like it was a titanic creature with its mouth open, ready to devour any food that presents itself. Little beast, How dare you? Dao Bing Xianyu was flustered and could not help but shout sternly. He would suffer great losses if Su Zimo were to truly leap into the Dragon Burial Valley. The Divine Phoenix Bone and secret behind the double immortality and Divine Phoenix Bone would be buried in the Dragon Burial Valley forever alongside Su Zimo's leap. Arriving at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo looked down and felt his head spin. His injuries were way too severe. Be it physically or mentally, he was at his limits after his golden core was destroyed, inner core shattered, and the release of blood escape after a drawn-out battle. A conflicted look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. He was indignant at the end of the day to die just like this. However, if he were to end up in Dao Bing Xianyu's hands and endure endless torment, he'd rather jump down here and end things once and for all. Forget it. Su Zimo sighed internally. Little beast. Su Zimo. Dao Bing Xianyu changed his manner of address hurriedly. Standing at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo swayed as though a slight wind could knock him over. Dao Bing Xianyu did not dare to close in at all. Su Zimo, there's no need for you to do this. Dao Bing Xianyu said with a deep voice, we can make a trade. As long as you hand the Divine Phoenix Bone to me, I can forget about the grudges between us. Su Zimo looked at Dao Bing Xianyu mockingly with his back facing the Dragon Burial Valley. Although Dao Bing Xianyu was smiling on the surface, he cursed internally, don't worry, I'm a man of my words. As long as you're willing to hand over the Divine Phoenix Bone, I'll leave immediately without hurting you at all. You want the Divine Phoenix Bone? Sure. Su Zimo smiled and jumped behind, remarking indifferently as he fell into the Dragon Burial Valley, come down and take it. You. Dao Bing Xianyu was enraged and disappeared from the spot in a flash. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley and stopped hurriedly. He wanted to extend his robes to pull Su Zimo up, but it was already too late. He could only watch as Su Zimo fell into the darkness, vanishing entirely. 10,000 years ago, a few emperors of the human race joined forces and fought a legendary war against the Divine Dragon, forming this gigantic ravine. The ravine was not only the tomb of the Divine Dragon, there were even more frightening powers mixed within it. Even a dermic weapon would turn into dust if it fell inside, let alone the body of a cultivator. Dao Bing Xianyu did not dare to head down and could only watch as the Divine Phoenix Bone disappeared from his sights. Little beast, do you think that this is over? Since you killed my grandson, I'm going to exterminate the Su family and no one will be spared. Dao Bing Xianyu had a menacing expression that was beyond horrifying. Chapter 577, Shock of the North Region. Chapter 577, Shock of the North Region. Su Zimo leaped down. His body disappeared completely into the Dragon Burial Valley. That was what the Paragons saw when they rushed to the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley. They could barely contain their shock, and all of them had conflicted expressions. That leap meant that the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island was now a thing of the past. All geniuses that fall would eventually be forgotten. That was the case even if that man was the cream of geniuses. That man possessed way too many secrets. In fact, he even broke through the restrictions between humans and demons and managed to cultivate both at the same time. This man had once single-handedly killed sealers and paragons of the immortal, Buddhist, and fiend sects in the elementary ancient battlefield and entered the human emperor's palace. This man was the second after the human emperor to unlock 9 spirit meridians and cultivate to the extreme foundation establishment realm. This man cultivated the extremely rare double phenomenon, and they were even primordial phenomenons that were lost. This man managed to obtain the vermilion fruit in the Great Qian ruins domineeringly against the barrage of all the paragons of the North region, even killing many of them along with the number 1 perfected being of the North region, Wuya. This man incinerated hundreds of nascent souls and stained the skies with their blood. This man managed to escape a void reversion's hunt to leap into the Dragon Burial Valley even with his golden core destroyed and his inner core shattered, leaving nothing but legends that almost seemed impossible. Zimo, the #1 monster incarnate throughout history, had died in the Dragon Burial Valley just like that. Everything was over. Nobody expected that the fight between the paragons for the vermilion fruit would end in such a manner. The Dragon Burial Valley is an unlucky place. Could it be the reason for that man's death as well? It's not just him. There were way too many paragons of the North region who died in this battle. It should be because of how unlucky the Dragon Burial Valley is. I guess we've escaped a calamity and survived. The paragons discussed in hushed whispers with trepidation. None of them dared to get close to the Dragon Burial Valley. Mu Dongqing and Bai Yuhan left the crowd silently. We've got to inform the third princess as quickly as possible about everything here, Mu Dongqing said with a dark tone. Bai Yuhan frowned. You can see the relationship between the third princess and Zimo as well. If she finds out about this, she's going to be heartbroken. Sigh, I can't bear to do it. It's not a matter of whether you bear to or not, Mu Dongqing said with a calm expression. There's no way to hide this matter at all. She will find out about it sooner or later. I know, Bai Yuhan nodded and sighed gently. Mu Dongqing retrieved a spirit crane from his storage bag and recounted the entire incident as clearly as he could before releasing the spirit crane. A few days later, capital of Great Zhou, Rain Admiration Pavilion. A spring shower had just poured down and a few shimmering droplets hung on the lotuses in the pond and the bamboo on the shore, sparkling with a bright luster. Two women stood beside the window looking at the picturesque scenery outside. They spoke softly with chuckles, sounding extremely charming. Both of them were extremely beautiful, akin to fairies from heaven. One of them was elegant and classy. Wearing a faint yellow dress, she exuded a hint of nobility through her brows. The other was cute and charming, wearing a pink dress. Every smile of hers turned her eyes into crescent moons. Sister, congratulations. Father is going to pass down the seat of the throne to you, the girl in pink said as she tilted her head with a bright, playful smile. The dignified woman shook her head. There's nothing to be congratulated about. I'm a woman after all. There are bound to be people objecting to me inheriting the throne. What are you afraid of? Father is in support of you. The girl in pink raised her fist. The elegant woman did not reply and merely gazed into the distance in deep thoughts. A long time later, she finally spoke. Yenner, actually, it's all because of one person that father is going to pass the throne to me. I know, young Master Su. The girl in pink blinked and said with a chuckle. Yes. The elegant woman nodded. Zimo is at Extreme Foundation Establishment, the second after the human emperor. Both father and the seniors of Great Zhou have high regards for his potential. It's because I've got some ties with Zimo, therefore. The girl in pink could not help but tease here. Sister, things between you and young Master Su are far from simple ties. In my opinion, you're a couple. Hee. Stupid lass, you don't know anything. The elegant woman glanced at the girl in pink in a charming manner. The two peerless women in the Rain Admiration Pavilion were the sisters, Ji Yaoxue and Demoness Ji. Right then, a streak of spirit light flashed and curved in midair, flying towards Ji Yaoxue. Ji Yaoxue frowned slightly and murmured, "It's a spirit crane. What happened?" Reaching out with her smooth, jade-like hand, she received the spirit crane. When she opened it, she froze on the spot and blood drained from her face. A long time later, Ji Yaoxue's figure swayed and she nearly fell down. Gripping onto the window aisle of the Rain Admiration Pavilion, she used so much strength that her fingernails dug deep into the wood. Demoness Ji hurried forward to support Ji Yaoxue. I am fine. Ji Yaoxue shook her head gently. Although she could still stand, an unresolvable sadness flashed through the depths of her eyes. Sister, don't get worked up. Demoness Ji inched forward to take a look out of curiosity. What? She could not help but exclaim when she read what was on the spirit crane. Every single piece of news on the spirit crane was one more explosive than the other. The final statement clearly stated that Zimo's cultivation was ruined entirely, and he leaped into the Dragon Burial Valley. Also, a void reversion from Glass Palace declared that he was going to destroy the Su family and spare no one. There was no difference between leaping down the Dragon Burial Valley and death. Instantly, Demoness Ji's eyes fogged up with a layer of mist. In the cultivation world, she was Demoness Ji who charmed the entire world. However, there were many times when she was still just a young maiden at heart. Ji Yaoxue closed her eyes expressionlessly. A long time later, she opened her eyes with a resolute gaze. She pulled out a spirit crane and wrote a few lines on it. Swiftly protect the king of Yin, Su Hong, and escort him out of Yin country. If Su Hong refuses to accept it, force can be used on him at this critical juncture. Handle this personally and do not let anyone else know about it. This mission must remain confidential, otherwise, his life might be in danger. Ji Yaoxue released the spirit crane immediately after penning her words without hesitation. The spirit crane flapped and shone with a bright spirit light before disappearing into the horizons. Ji Yaoxue was already exuding the aura of an emperor with complete dominance. Demoness Ji did not have the mood to linger in the palace, turning to run outside as she wiped away her tears in secret. She wanted to confirm with Gu Shi whether the news was real. A few days later, one after another, news arrived from the Great Jian ruins. The fight for the vermilion fruit, the battle between the paragons, the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island, Zimo, the entire North region was shaken. The cultivation world of Tianhuang mainland was in quite a stir. Instantly, almost all the cultivators were discussing the battle at the Great Jian ruins, about the number one monster incarnate of history who was now dead and had turned into a thing of the past. Chapter 578, Slaughtered City. Chapter 578, Slaughtered City. Ethereal Peak. The sect went silent after news of Su Zimo's death in the Dragon Burial Valley. Xianyi and the other two had parted ways with Su Zimo for slightly more than a month. None of them expected that it would be an eternal parting. It did not matter how external cultivators viewed Su Zimo, how they said that he was a demon with an innately feral personality, that he was a fiend who loved to kill. In the hearts of Xianyi and the others, Su Zimo would always be a disciple of Ethereal Peak. In order to protect his sect mates, he sacrificed himself as bait in the battle at Dongling Valley and lured away everyone from Blood Crow Palace while undertaking the immense risk of dying. In the sect competition, he was outstanding and ascended beyond everyone with a domineering aura, shutting the mouths of all sects and cultivators that mocked Ethereal Peak forever. In the Great Jian ruins, he single-handedly forced back 3 strong sects and protected the safeties of Xianyi and the other 2, allowing them to return with rewards while curing the disheveled old man's injuries at the same time. He was the number 1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou. He was at Extreme Foundation Establishment, the second after the Human Emperor. He had unlimited potential such that even the Emperor of Great Zhou had high regards for him. He was the pride of Ethereal Peak. But all of that had now disappeared along with Su Zimo's leap. Lu Hui sighed gently. Dao Being Xianyu declared that he wanted to annihilate the Su family. Given his cultivation realm as a void reversion and the background of Glass Palace, it's probably over for the Su family. Mortals should not be implicated in grudges between cultivators. To think that even an immortal sect like Glass Palace would resort to something so despicable. Immortal sects? They're nothing but shameless. The disheveled old man cursed hatefully. Xianyi remarked deeply, I'm guessing that Dao Being Xianyu is not going to take action personally against a mortal in light of his status. Although that was the case, no sect or faction in the North region dared to protect the Su family. It was not only because of Dao Being Xianyu or Glass Palace. Rather, Su Zimo's identity was way too sensitive. He even killed too many paragons of the North region for the vermilion fruit fight while incinerating hundreds of nascent souls. He had offended almost all the major sects and factions of the North region. Anyone that dared protect the Su family would be pitting themselves against the entire North region. The Great Zhou dynasty did not dare to do it. Ethereal Peak did not dare to either. A failure would instantly result in a calamity befalling them. To be fair, against the current circumstances, Ethereal Peak was already enduring immense pressure for not severing their ties with Zimo. Sect Master Ling Yuan released his spirit consciousness and surveyed his surroundings before whispering, "Senior Crane has already left the sect to head for Yin country. I hope that she'll be able to make it in time. This is an extremely serious matter that must not be leaked, or the sect will be met with impending annihilation." Xian Yi and the others nodded hurriedly. At that moment, a powerful and familiar aura sped over from not far away. The old immortal Crane was back. Everyone from Ethereal Peak was alerted. Pushing through the door, the old immortal Crane could not conceal her fatigue and surveyed her surroundings before sighing. "I was too late." Upon hearing that, everyone from Ethereal Peak felt their hearts skip a beat. The old immortal Crane continued, "Xian Yu did not appear personally due to his status. He sent dozens of Glass Palace disciples in a group to the capital of Yin country, and the king of Yin, Su Hong, is nowhere to be found." Everyone from Ethereal Peak heaved a sigh of relief, but they were confused. If Su Hong's whereabouts were unknown, he should be safe for the time being as long as he was not in the hands of Glass Palace. Why would the old immortal Crane then say that she was late? Why was there a hint of sadness in her tone as well? The old immortal Crane continued, "The group from Glass Palace was furious due to their fruitless trip and laid down the order to slaughter the entire city in order to force Su Hong to show himself." Everyone's mouths dropped agape as they looked on with disbelieving expressions. For the longest time, they could not recover from their misery. Slaughter the city. Those words were short, but they sounded extremely grim. Almost everyone from the capital of Yin country were mortals. Against the powerful might of cultivators, those mortals had no way of defending, and their lives were similar to ants. Although they did not witness it personally, everyone from Ethereal Peak could imagine the desperation and helplessness those mortals felt against the cultivators. Everyone seemed to be able to hear the tragic cries. Everyone seemed to be able to envision endless arms flaying, seeking help. The old immortal Crane closed her eyes, as though she could not bear to recall, and sighed. "By the time I arrived, the capital of Yin was filled with rivers of blood and mountains of corpses. It was devastating and looked like it was hell." The disheveled old man clenched his teeth and snarled, "Bastards! Creating such massacres against mortals because of the grudges of cultivators. Are they truly not afraid of divine retribution?" Lu Hui's voice was quivering. "There's no such thing as divine retribution in this world," Xian Yi mocked bitterly. The old immortal Crane continued, "More than halfway through the massacre, cultivators of the fiend sects arrived, led by their pure maiden. They fought against the Glass Palace cultivators and forced the latter back. In that case, there's an extremely high chance that Su Hong was rescued by pure maiden sect. That should be the case. It was lucky that the fiend sects arrived. Otherwise, all the mortals in the capital of Yin." Everyone from Ethereal Peak suddenly went quiet as they discussed. Silence overwhelmed them. Those that killed were from the immortal sects, while those that rescued were from the fiend sections. It had to be said that this was truly a great irony. Who were the true immortals and who were the true fiends? Right from the beginning, Ethereal Peak was established for the sake of protecting the masses while exterminating fiends and demons. But now, when they said the words, "It was lucky that the fiend sects arrived," everyone felt their values collapsing within them. Did it mean that they had to kill Zimo for his demonic cultivation? Were they still going to continue hunting down the fiend sects despite the fact that the latter saved the masses? An ex-disciple of Ethereal Peak, Yin Beichen, was now a fiend as well. Furthermore, he was a great fiend among them, an Azura. However, Yin Beichen had once said that although he had killed plenty of people in his lifetime, he had never laid his hands on mortals. Azuras killed divine beings, but they did not massacre for fun. Wasn't a fiend such as him much holier when compared to the masses from Glass Palace? After a moment of silence, just as everyone thought that everything was over, the old immortal Crane pursed her lips and took a deep breath before continuing. After the group from Glass Palace left, They were still indignant and went on to massacre 13 other cities on their way back to vent their frustrations. What? Everyone from Ethereal Peak was shocked. Within a single day, countless people in the territory of the Yin country lost everything with their families broken apart. The death toll alone has already crossed 30 million. No natural catastrophe would be this scary. The true catastrophes were often made by men. Gripping his fists, Xianyi said coldly, "Although Glass Palace is an immortal sect, aren't they afraid of incurring the wrath of the entire cultivation world by massacring innocents like this? They've got the reason to back it up." The old immortal crane shook her head with a look of irony in her eyes. Glass Palace stated that because pure maiden sect of the fiend sects appeared in Yin country, it meant that Yin country was in cahoots with the fiend sections. In that case, because the mortals of Yin country have long fallen into the path of the fiends, Glass Palace was upholding justice by slaying fiends and demons. Everyone from Ethereal Peak felt a sense of helplessness, and their hearts felt stuffy. That reasoning sounded absurd and hilarious. Everyone knew that Glass Palace merely massacred the mortals just to vent their frustrations. However, nobody could refute it. That was the way the world was. Strength reigned supreme. Everyone from Ethereal Peak, who knew the entire events of things, knew that the mortals of Yin country were innocent. However, how many people could tell the real truth? In other vassal states, in other corners of the world, there were still countless mortals who did not know of the truth, applauding the immortals for exterminating evil while upholding righteousness. The mortals at the lowest rungs were the easiest to be hoodwinked and deceived. Chapter 579, Bottom of Dragon Burial Valley. Chapter 579, Bottom of Dragon Burial Valley. A month had passed since the Battle of the Paragons at the Great Qian Ruins. The news spread through Tianhuang mainland and almost the entire world knew about it. Middle Continent, Elixir Yang sect. In a majestic cave abode, a man and two women stood. The man had decent features with a grim expression. This was the ex-disciple of Ethereal Peak, Ji Qingtian. Among the women, one of them wore a white, pure blouse and had extremely beautiful features. However, she exuded a faint coldness. The other woman was extremely handsome, and her features looked like a painting. However, she was dressed like a flirtatious young man. One of them was Long Ro, who had already joined Thousand Crane sect, and the other was Tang Yu of Elixir Yang sect. The three of them stood facing one another silently. The atmosphere within the cave abode was somewhat tense. Heis. A long while later, Ji Qingtian sighed gently and spoke. "Has the news been confirmed? Has junior brother Su truly jumped into the Dragon Burial Valley?" "Yes." Tang Yu nodded. "Many people witnessed it personally. The news can't be fake." Long Ro did not speak the entire time, her gaze turning colder by the moment. Ji Qingtian shook his head, lamenting while sighing. "This matter has been blown out of proportion." Tang Yu pursed her lips with a conflicted expression, gazing into the distance and murmuring, "So, you're the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island." It's no wonder. When news of the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island reached her in the ancient battlefield, Tang Yu had a brief moment of suspicion. After all, Su Zimo had some similarities with the monster incarnate of Divine Phoenix Island. However, later on, she rejected her suspicion. Their differences were way too obvious as well. As she recalled everything that happened in the ancient battlefield, Tang Yu felt sadness. While the two of them had not spent a long time together, she was secretly awaiting their next encounter internally. But now, her hopes had turned into emptiness. Does Xiaoning know about this? Suddenly, Ji Qingtian asked. She does. Tang Yu replied. She locked herself up and refused to eat or drink. It's been an entire day. Thankfully, Night Spirit is watching over her so she isn't in any danger. In another cave abode, Xiaoning leaned against the wall, huddled against her knees. Her eyes were red and swollen as she sobbed softly. Night Spirit watched over her silently. A humane look of worry could actually be seen in his eyes. Thereafter, as if he thought of something, The killing intent in his eyes surged. West region. In a desert. A fatty sat squarely beside a tomb, muttering to himself, "Bro, why are you gone just like that?" Little fatty sat beside the tomb and bawled like a child. North region, Great Jian ruins. This day, two unexpected guests arrived at the ruins, looking fatigued. One of them was extremely tall at more than 2 meters and had long hands and legs. His arms were slumped naturally and were longer than his knees. The tall man carried a long rod and his eyes shone fiercely with a scarlet glint. The other man was barehanded. Although he was slightly shorter, his body looked even more muscular and mighty. Both of them had a lot of hair, and although they were in human form, they could not conceal the demonic chi they emitted at all. They were demons. If Zimo was here, he would definitely recognize that these two men were Monkey and the spirit tiger who had gone missing for many years. Monkey entered the depths of the ruins and broke through the encirclement of the otherworldly soldiers with the long rod in his hands, charging right for the Dragon Burial Valley. The spirit tiger followed behind him and took care of the otherworldly soldiers at the back. After more than a year, Monkey and the spirit tiger had both formed their inner cores. They had not only grown in terms of cultivation realm, their combat strength was rather frightening too. It was especially the case for Monkey. No otherworldly soldier could withstand the touch of his rod. A single slam, and they would dissipate to dust. Before long, Monkey and the spirit tiger arrived at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley. Gazing down the cliff beneath him, the spirit tiger felt his head spin and could not help but gasp, retreating a few steps back instinctively. Monkey narrowed his gaze as well. They could sense an extremely terrifying aura and energy fluctuation coming from the Dragon Burial Valley, and it was shuddering. "Boss, we should head back first. After all, this is the territory of the humans." "I've got an uneasy feeling." The spirit tiger looked nervous. After cultivating an inner core, demons could speak in human tongue as well. He was also very sad over Zimo's death. However, at the end of the day, unlike Monkey, he would not make the trip thousands of miles tirelessly just to take a look at the place of Zimo's death. "Boss, there's no point standing here and looking. He's already jumped." The spirit tiger persuaded again. "We should head back and just take over a few mountains. Our days will be so enjoyable at that time." Monkey did not reply and merely gazed at the Dragon Burial Valley quietly. The scarlet glint in his eyes intensified, and his killing intent was almost corporeal at this point. A long time later, Monkey finally turned around slowly. The scarlet glint in his eyes faded gradually as he nodded to the spirit tiger. "Let's go." Monkey and the spirit tiger soared through the air and disappeared at the horizon in the blink of an eye. Not long later, a gigantic tear opened up in the void above the Dragon Burial Valley without any warning, surging with chilling winds. Two figures leaped out from within. The old man at the front was still rather composed. However, the same could not be said for the other person as he fell out staggering with a pale expression. His legs were wobbly and he could barely stand. The old man wore a Confucian crown and long robes. His cheeks were rosy and his tall beard swayed gently with the wind. If a desk appeared and he held a wooden block with his left hand and a folding fan with his right, the old man would completely resemble a storyteller that made his way around the world. The man that came out later on was slightly rotund with a pale expression without any beard. This was Lin Xuanji, the man who had once entered the Dragon Bone Valley, one of the 9 forbidden grounds, along with Zimo. Arriving at the edge of the Dragon Burial Valley, the old man looked down in silence. Lin Xuanji let out a slow breath and could not help but ask, "Old man, what's down there in the Dragon Burial Valley? What do you think?" The old man turned to look at Lin Xuanji, asking in reverse. "Nothing more than a pile of corpses." As Lin Xuanji spoke, he caught sight of the strange expression on the old man's face, and a thought flashed through his mind, and he was frightened by that possibility. "Old man, there can't be people alive down there, right?" "Heh." The old man chuckled oddly as a silent acknowledgement. Rubbing his chin, Lin Xuanji said deeply, In that case, there's a chance that lad is still alive. He revealed a joyful expression and laughed. Like I said, his fate is extremely unyielding. How can someone who can be so energetic after eating a dragon egg in the Dragon Bone Valley die so easily? The old man shook his head with an indifferent expression. You're missing the main point. Huh? Lin Xuanji was confused. The old man continued, the main point is that even if Zimo isn't dead, he's no different from being dead. Lin Xuanji seemed to be in deep thought. However, he heard the old man continue once more, don't forget, his golden core was destroyed and his inner core was crushed. That's equivalent to a loss of his lifetime's cultivation. Even if he's alive, he's no different from a dead man. Lin Xuanji was enlightened. The old man was right. Zimo would no longer be the #1 monster incarnate in history with his crushed golden core and shattered inner core. What did it matter even if he was alive? He would never get the chance to take revenge for that massive feud. The old man lamented and sighed gently. Back then, that lad's fate was changed after much effort from an expert. Unfortunately, he still couldn't win against fate at the end of the day. Chapter 580, Trying the Best to Fight Against Fate. Chapter 580, Trying the Best to Fight Against Fate. A long time later, Zimo stirred awake. Gradually, his 5 senses started recovering. The first thing Zimo smelled was a faint scent of books and ink. It was old, emitted from ancient books that had been kept for a long time, but it smelled good. Thereafter, his vision gradually cleared up. His surroundings were dark and countless dust specks floated before him. Struggling to sit up, Zimo found that 2 wooden slabs were attached to his right wrist, stabilizing his wounds. His muscles were still sore and painful. Am I not dead? Zimo looked around. A series of wooden bookshelves stood all around, and each of them were filled with many ancient books. Most of them were filled with dust and should not have been used for a long time. On the surface, this looked like an old study that was extremely spacious. There were at least a few thousand ancient books here. Zimo could only feel his head spinning, and his consciousness was still fuzzy. He remembered leaping into the Dragon Burial Valley after being pursued by Daobeing Xianyu. However, he couldn't remember anything thereafter. Shaking his head, Zimo looked around and accidentally caught sight of a bronze square tripod at the side, gradually recalling some things. The moment he leaped into the Dragon Burial Valley, he initially thought that his death was certain. However, when he caught sight of the fainted little fox in his embrace, he felt his heart wrench. That little thing's fate had been way too tragic. She lost her mother when she was young and was imprisoned by the scarlet-armored gigantic crocodile for dozens of years. After finally gaining freedom to follow him into the outside world, she was met with such a cruel fate. Was the little fox going to die just like that without getting a chance to experience the beautiful world outside? Unable to bear the thought of that, Zimo opened his storage bag and withdrew the bronze square tripod with all his might, hiding inside it with the little fox. The Dragon Burial Valley was known as an unlucky place. Countless top experts and supreme powerful beings were buried there. Nobody knew of the dangers within it. The bronze square tripod might be their only shot at survival. Although he was inside the bronze square tripod, Zimo could still sense clearly that he was falling rapidly. The sound of winds wheezing filled his ears. An extremely terrifying aura surged outside the bronze square tripod. An endless amount of power collided against the walls of the tripod repeatedly. It intensified in a frightening manner. Bang, bang, bang. With each collision, a deafening bang could be heard. The sound was so ferocious that it seemed like the bronze square tripod was about to break into shards. Zimo coiled his body and protected the little fox in his embrace as best as he could. However, against the tremendous impact, he slammed against the walls of the bronze square tripod left and right. His tendons and bones broke, and coupled with the injuries he had already sustained, it felt like his skeleton was about to fall apart. The terrifying bangs sounded like they could drown everything. Zimo merely felt his ears buzz, and his orifices were oozing with blood. The external power from the Dragon Burial Valley was way too scary. If not for the protection of the bronze square tripod, Zimo and the little fox would have turned into dust instantly without any corpse remaining. A while later, they were met with an even fiercer impact. Slamming heavily against the walls of the tripod, finally, Zimo could not hold on any longer and fainted entirely. When he woke up once again, he was already in this spacious study. Could there be someone still alive in the depths of this Dragon Burial Valley? Zimo thought to himself. Suddenly, he felt as though something was rubbing against his leg. Zimo looked over. A furry little thing looked at him with large, watery eyes that were equal parts filled with concern and joy. The little thing was filled fur that was scarlet like flames and seemed like a blanket. Its eyes were bright and shiny like black gemstones. It was the little fox who had fallen into the Dragon Burial Valley with him. Previously, the little fox was injured by Xianyu, but now, she looked like she had already recovered. Zimo felt slightly consoled. I am fine. Zimo smiled when he sensed the worry coming from the little fox. Although my injuries are more serious this time round, I'll be fine after recuperating for a while. As he said that, he tried to stand up. He grabbed the bronze square tripod with one hand, wanting to put it away in his storage bag. Zimo's expression changed slightly. The bronze square tripod did not budge at all. Although the bronze square tripod was extremely heavy, Zimo was able to lift it effortlessly prior to this. And yet, suddenly, he realized something. His golden core was already destroyed and his inner core was already shattered. His cores were directly broken by someone. Instinctively, Zimo tried circulating his inner core and a sharp pain shot through his chest. Ugh! He grunted deeply and his body wavered as a layer of sweat appeared on his forehead. His inner core was dark and dull, covered by a web of frightening tears. Zimo sensed everything carefully and his expression turned even more terrible. There was already no way to salvage his inner core. The situation was even worse for his golden core. The dantian around his abdomen was empty, like a hollow black hole, without any trace of spirit energy. Zimo took a deep breath and slowly condensed the spirit qi in his surroundings. He could still sense the existence of spirit qi and was able to absorb it. However, after the spirit qi entered his dantian, it vanished and could not be retained inside. Right now, his dantian was like a leaky airbag. Although water could enter, it could not be retained. In other words, even if Zimo wanted to cultivate once more step by step from the qi condensation realm, it would be impossible. That was also the reason why the cruelest punishment for a cultivator was to cripple their golden core. That was because they wouldn't even get the chance to cultivate anew. Zimo clenched his teeth, and an unyielding look flashed through his eyes as he channeled his bloodline to move the bronze square tripod with all his might. At the same time, he absorbed spirit qi and made use of the brief moment when it circulated within his body to open his storage bag to put the bronze square tripod away. That was an extremely simple move. However, Zimo expended an immense amount of effort as he panted heavily, drenched in sweat with a pale expression. Zimo chuckled bitterly. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had overwhelmed all other cultivators of the same level in an indomitable manner and had even crossed major realms to kill his opponents. He was known as the #1 monster incarnate of history to the major factions. To think that he would end up in such a state one day. Although Zimo still possessed a tremendous power of bloodline, it was no longer possible if he wanted to fight against true paragons of the Golden Core realm. There wouldn't come the day when he would be able to take revenge on Xianyu. Is this going to be my fate? Zimo gripped his fists so fiercely that even his knuckles were turning white. I'm not willing to accept it. I refuse to accept it. I'm indignant. I'm going to fight against my fate, even if it takes me everything I've got. Even when his sharp fingernails dug into his palm and blood oozed out, Zimo did not realize it. There was even a faint demonic blood glint shining from the depths of his eyes. The little fox squatted beside Zimo's legs and looked up at him worriedly. Although she could not speak, she could feel the pain and relentlessness in Zimo's heart at the moment. There was nothing more despairing than the loss of hope. Suddenly, a chant sounded from outside the door. Thus I have heard, to cultivate one's body with compassion and imbue kindness into Buddha's wisdom to gain enlightenment. Arriving here, known as the infinite immeasurable world, empowering billions of living beings. The voice was pure and flawless, reverberating endlessly and cleansing one's mind. Someone was chanting a sutra outside. Chapter 581, 10,000-Year-Old Buddhist Temple. Chapter 581, 10,000-Year-Old Buddhist Temple. The voice interrupted Zimo's thoughts. Someone was truly alive at the depths of the Dragon Burial Valley. Zimo pushed the door open and walked out to see a young monk assuming a lotus position on a praying mat. The young monk's palms were placed together before his chest as he chanted softly. Zimo was momentarily stunned. He thought that anyone who lived at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley would definitely be an incredible person. However, he had not expected it to be such a young monk. The young monk before him should only be at Golden Core Realm at most. Although Zimo's cultivation was gone, his eyes were still sharp. Sensing something, the little monk stopped chanting and turned around. His eyes were clear as water, as though they contained pure sincerity. The little monk smiled gently and stood up, greeting with clasped palms. "Patron, you're awake?" Zimo walked forward and bowed. "I am Zimo. Thank you for your life-saving grace, fellow Taoist." "You don't have to do that, patron." The little monk smiled. "I've only brought you here because my master sensed you." "Master?" Zimo's tone was ladled with surprise. It seemed like this little monk was not the only one at the bottom of Dragon Burial Valley. Nodding, the little monk looked towards a gigantic hall not far away. "However, my master is currently in seclusion and will not see anyone for the time being." The doors were shut on a majestic hall not far away. Zimo nodded and asked, "How long was I unconscious for?" "A month or so." Zimo pursed his lips in silence, feeling a hint of bitterness in his mouth. Because his cultivation was destroyed, his body's healing capabilities had also decreased massively. He had not recovered entirely even after a month. After a short moment, Zimo asked again, "May I ask when your master will come forth from his seclusion?" "I don't know." The little monk shook his head. "It can be tomorrow, it can be a year later, or even 100 years later." 100 years. Zimo chuckled bitterly. Sensing Zimo's disappointment, the little monk consoled him sincerely. "Patron, there's no need to hurry. Time is fleeting and 100 years will pass by in the blink of an eye, like a divine steed crossing terrains." The little monk looked like he was younger than 20. Those words truly did not sound like they should be said by him and seemed odd. The little monk continued, "Patron, if you find yourself getting bored, you can casually look through the sutras in the Sutra Chamber. Those Buddhist sutras contain a lot of knowledge and the secrets of the universe. Even a wise old person might not be able to comprehend the wisdom within fully. Those sutras contain endless joy and time will pass by unknowingly once you're immersed in them. 100 years will pass by quickly." It was easy for the little monk to say that, but Zimo truly could not gather his interest. Embarrassed to decline the goodwill of the little monk, Zimo nodded with a smile and started surveying his surroundings. The courtyard did not have many structures, only two. One of them was the Sutra Chamber and the other was the majestic hall. There wasn't even a meditation room. This was an extremely simple and old temple. Ancient and aged. The only two structures looked like they were from a long time ago and had endured through the seasonal changes and the sands of time. 2 vegetable gardens were planted before the big hall, giving them some green food. The main entrance of the old temple was extremely battered and creaked with the gust of the wind, as though it could fall over at any moment. Why is there such a strange old temple at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley? Zimo had a lost expression. For a moment, a thought seemed to have flashed through his mind. However, Zimo's mind was way too chaotic at that time, and most of his attention was spent thinking of how to recover his cultivation. As such, he did not think much about that thought. After a moment of standing still, Zimo turned around towards the entrance of the old temple. There was truly nothing to be seen around the old temple. Zimo wanted to head outside and check out what was at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. The little monk had a worried expression and could not help but remark, "Patron, you have yet to recover from your serious injuries. Don't head too far out, it's dangerous out there." "Thank you for your kind reminder, fellow Taoist. I'll be careful." Zimo expressed his thanks with cupped fists before turning to head out. The moment he stepped out of the old temple, he felt a chilling gust of wind breeze by and could not help but shudder. Before him was a meandering valley with countless crushed rocks on the ground. The cliffs on both sides were filled with strange rocks. It was dead silent throughout the entire valley. Zimo frowned slightly and hesitated for a moment before continuing ahead. Although the little fox had a frightened expression, she still chose to tag along behind Zimo. Zimo reared his head and looked up. A fog surged above the valley. 10,000 years ago, when countless experts fought against one another, the remnant of their energies formed a region of chaos and interweaved above. Any living being that was drawn into it would be shredded into a mist of blood. Now that Zimo's cultivation was crippled and he had lost every single method of ascending into the skies, it was easy for him to jump down from above, but impossible for him to return up. Zimo realized that if he could not recover his cultivation, he would most likely grow old and exhaust his remaining lifespan at the bottom of this valley. Yet, how could he recover his cultivation? His golden core was already shattered into pieces and had dispersed entirely. His dantian was now a leaking existence that could not be used to gather spirit chi. There was no way for him to recover his golden core. The only thing that he could recover was his inner core. Although his inner core was lined with tears, it was still intact at the very least. However, how could he recover it? Zimo had not cultivated to the realm of being able to absorb the essence of the world. If he wanted to continue with his demonic cultivation, he would have to use up a large amount of life force. It could come from fresh meat, or rare treasures, or elixirs. However, apart from him, the little fox, the little monk and his master and 2 ordinary vegetable patches, there was nothing else at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Without replenishment, it would be difficult to circulate the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, let alone recover his inner core. Although Zimo sank into his thoughts, his footsteps did not stop as he continued walking forward instinctively. After they passed a bend, the little fox suddenly stopped in her tracks and bit Zimo's trunks, holding him back fervently. Alarmed, Zimo snapped out of his thoughts. Corpses were sprawled on the ground one after another before him. Some of them laid horizontally, some of them sat on the ground while others were torn and distorted. They came in various shapes and positions. The corpses strewn on the ground extended all the way to the edge of the valley with no end in sight. Zimo realized that these corpses should have been buried here in the valley during that catastrophe 10,000 years ago. Although 10,000 years had passed, those corpses were pristine and did not show any signs of decay. In fact, Zimo caught sight of a perfect body among the corpses. How frightening was that expert when he was alive? These were people whose bodies have not decayed after 10,000 years. Suddenly, Zimo sensed a scarlet glint shining from the corner of his eye and turned over to look instinctively. His pupils constricted rapidly and his hairs stood on end. A few drops of fresh blood were splattered on the walls around him. Zimo merely took a single glance and felt a piercing pain surge through his eyes. His eyeballs felt like they were about to explode. Which expert did that blood belong to for it to be this terrifying? Even after 10,000 years, the splattered blood almost killed Zimo. Right then, he felt an immense sense of danger jolt into his mind. Chapter 582, Haunt. Chapter 582, Haunt. A sinister wind gusted without any warning. 10 feet away, phantoms appeared one after another, producing menacing faces that faded away as rapidly as they appeared. Zimo felt his heart skip a beat as he suddenly recalled something. The otherworldly soldiers formed in the Great Jian ruins were merely troops of the Imperial Army buried in the past. Yet, what sort of people were buried in the Dragon Burial Valley? These were people whose bodies have not decayed after 10,000 years. These were people whose splattered blood on the walls possessed immense mights. Those otherworldly soldiers formed by the Imperial Army were enough to fight against golden cores. If so, how terrifying would the haunting, vengeful spirits of the fallen experts here be? Hurry, let's go. Zimo shouted softly and hugged the little fox, turning back the way he came from. Thankfully, they were not far from the old temple. He could return to it within tens of breaths with a full burst of his body. There was a bend up ahead. Although Zimo had been distracted along the way, he could vaguely recall that this was the only bend he had turned. In other words, he would be able to see the old temple once he turned around this bend. However, after heading over, Zimo stopped in his tracks instinctively. There wasn't any old temple before him. Instead, there were corpses that were mounted like a mountain. Not far away, a gooey river of blood flowed, blocking the path forward with a nauseating stench of blood. Frightening faces floated on the surface of the river with sinister smiles. Zimo narrowed his eyes and focused his gaze. The sight before him did not vanish still. On the contrary, those corpses came alive one after another. They struggled and stood up with rotting flesh hanging from their bodies. Slowly, swaying, they staggered towards Zimo with a disgusting stench. Pairs of arms protruded one after another from the river of blood up ahead as well. Many people drenched in blood crawled up the shores and grinned brightly with bloodshot eyes. Zimo felt chills run down his spine and cold sweat poured down his forehead. The little fox was even more rattled and burrowed herself into Zimo's embrace, chattering. She covered her eyes with her tiny paws and did not dare to stick her head out. There were only two possibilities to what was before them. First, it meant that the Sutra Chamber and little monk that he had seen earlier were all illusions, and that there wasn't any old temple at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley at all. Second, he had not left where he was initially. By right, he would have seen the unknown old temple once he turned around the bend. But now, Zimo had been sprinting the entire way and hadn't rested at all. He clearly felt that he had turned the bend, and yet, instead of any trace of the old temple, he was met with this mountain of corpses and river of blood that had a torrential, malevolent aura. Both possibilities did not seem optimistic for him. The first possibility meant that there was an extremely terrifying existence here that could bewitch his 5 senses and conjure illusions before him. The Sutra Chamber, the old temple, and the little monk were all fake. The Dragon Burial Valley was formed 10,000 years ago. How could there be an old temple at the bottom of it? The only thing that Zimo believed in were the eyes of the little monk that were clear as water. Those eyes could not be fake at all. The second possibility was that Zimo encountered what was known in the mortal realm as a ghost wall. He felt that he had been sprinting forward endlessly without any rest at all. In reality, he had not left the place at all. There were malevolent ghosts that blinded his 5 senses with the use of supreme dermic powers, causing him to run in circles after losing his sense of direction. All of a sudden, Zimo felt that something breathed down the back of his neck. Pissed. Instantly, his hair stood on end. Without even thinking, his eyes shone fiercely as he slapped in reverse. Piak! His fist flew through the air with a crisp sound. There was nobody behind him. Zimo took a deep breath of air. Just as he was about to turn around, he discovered that there was a woman with disheveled hair standing not far away, wearing a white blouse with bloodstains on it. The woman's back was facing him, and her face could not be seen as she stood there motionlessly. Any existence at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley was definitely way more terrifying than those in the Great Jian ruins. The otherworldly soldiers in the ruins were incorporeal. Zimo did not know how frightening this woman was in her past life or how much vengeance she held, but her malevolent chi had materialized into actual flesh. Even if Zimo was at his peak condition, it would be hard for him to escape death if he encountered these existences, let alone the fact that his cultivation was crippled now. He did not dare to act recklessly and glared at the white-bloused woman with a tense expression. All of a sudden, the white-bloused woman moved. Everything beneath her head did not move at all. However, her head twisted to the back sinisterly and faced Zimo directly. Her mouth, nose, and ears were filled with blood, and she had no eyeballs, merely a pair of bloody, empty sockets. The woman smiled creepily, and her grisly red long tongue extended like a serpent. The little fox had just poked its head out to look through the gaps in her paws when she caught sight of that. "Ah!" she exclaimed and fainted from the shock. It wasn't surprising. Even Zimo, who had tons of experience of the world, felt chills run down his spine and his limbs turn wobbly. The white-bloused woman moved and, with a sinister gust of wind, lunged forward. Zimo extended his right hand hurriedly to defend. There was no way he could threaten the white-bloused woman with his power. The divine phoenix bone might be the only thing that could work. Swoosh! Suddenly, the white-bloused woman stopped in her tracks and looked down somewhat warily at Zimo's right hand with her empty, bloody sockets. "Tisk, tsk, tsk." She snickered sinisterly and in a flash, vanished right before Zimo's eyes. Zimo was alarmed and checked his surroundings hurriedly. There were no traces of the white-bloused woman around him at all, as though everything that happened earlier on was his hallucination. Zimo knew that the difference between them was way too great. Although that white-bloused woman was created from malevolent chi, her strength was most likely not weaker than void reversions with boundless dharmic powers. In fact, she might even be comparable to Dharma characteristics. Up ahead, the bloody corpses with rotten flesh crawled out from the blood river, one after another, and closed in rapidly. A bloodied figure suddenly lunged over with a menacing face, opening its mouth to try and bite Zimo's neck. Zimo twisted his right hand and used it like a dagger, thrusting it into the bloodied figure. Shing! A blaze surged. Without making a single sound, the bloodied figure was engulfed in a set of bright flames. The other corpses and bloodied figures hurriedly stopped in their tracks. They were malevolent entities, and the things they feared most were lightning and flames. Naturally, they could sense the terrifying power that was hidden in the divine phoenix bone. Even so, the corpses and bloodied figures refused to leave, merely standing not far away to watch Zimo with stoned gazes and stick saliva dripping slowly from their mouths. At that moment, a white figure appeared silently behind Zimo and gradually materialized. It was the white-bloused woman who had gone missing earlier on. The white-bloused woman licked her lips and a scarlet glint appeared in her hollow sockets. She extended her skeleton palm that shone coldly on its fingertips slowly towards the top of Zimo's head. Chapter 583, Sutra. Chapter 583, Sutra. All of a sudden, the sound of Sanskrit reverberated through the valley, possessing a mysterious noble might that was shuddering. Om, Ma, Inai, Pa, Mi, Hom. Every single Sanskrit word that was spoken caused a tremendous vibration to reverberate through the voids. The corpses and bloodied figures that were initially in front of Zimo vanished entirely. There was no mountain or corpses, nor was there any river of blood. Everything was just an illusion. The only thing that was real was the creepy white skeleton palm hovering above Zimo's head. Not far away, a little monk strode over slowly. Although he was at a young age, he was dignified in his dharmic ways as he stared behind Zimo with two divine lights beaming from his eyes. He held a string of Buddha beads in his right hand and chanted Sanskrit endlessly. There was a lotus seat on his left palm that emanated with a mysterious glow. As the little monk walked over, the illusions that were initially in Zimo's line of dispersed and the meandering ravine reappeared. He was standing at the bend in the valley, and the battered old temple was not far away. When the white-bloused woman caught sight of the little monk, her expression suddenly turned uneasy. The bloody sockets on her face stared at the lotus seat on the little monk's hand hesitantly, seemingly cautious. "Evil being, what are you waiting for? Leave!" The little monk hollered lightly with a stern expression. He raised his left hand and pushed the lotus seat gently in the direction of the white-bloused woman. The lotus seat floated over through the air. One after another, pure white lotus petals opened up from inside out, layer by layer. As the lotus blossomed, the lotus seat let out an extremely terrifying aura. "Ah!" The white-bloused woman shrieked and turned into smoke, escaping far away and vanishing in the blink of an eye. The little monk hurried forward and put away the lotus seat before tugging Zimo's sleeves, whispering, "Patron, hurry, let's go." As he said that, the little monk turned and sprinted back towards the old temple. Zimo's heart skipped a beat and followed him. Thankfully, they were not too far away from the old temple, and the both of them returned to it within tens of breaths. The little monk only heaved a sigh of relief after turning around to close the main doors. "Thank you for your life-saving grace, fellow Taoist." Zimo bowed and expressed his thanks. The little monk waved it off, smiling. "No matter, patron. It's only right of me." "What is your name, fellow Taoist?" Zimo asked. The little monk replied, "I'm Jian." Jian. Zimo muttered twice softly. Purity, honesty, and sincerity. Those were the impressions that the little monk gave Zimo. Everything was truly embodied by the Jian character in his name. The evil entities outside are extremely vicious and possess supreme dharmic powers. I'm not their match either. Jian explained. The malevolent ghost earlier only turned to flee because she was wary about this lotus seat, thinking that my master had appeared. If we had waited for her to realize what was happening, we would have been doomed. Feeling somewhat guilty, Zimo said, "I was careless just now and nearly implicated you." 8 years' worth of cultivation was destroyed overnight, and he had turned into a mortal from the number 1 monster incarnate of history. Anyone else would also have a hard time accepting such a defeat and downfall. Earlier on, when he left the old temple, part of it was out of curiosity to check out what was outside. Another part of it was truly because he was brooding internally. He had truly suffered immensely mentally. Jian seemed to be able to sense the trouble Zimo was facing. "Actually, there won't be any danger as long as you don't head out of this place. Although this courtyard is not large, you can move around freely within it, patron. The sutras in the sutra chamber are also free for you to read. At that time, we might be able to share our understanding and explore the depths of Buddhism together." Pausing for a moment, as though he recalled something, Jian reminded hurriedly, "Right, also, don't ever head to the backyard of the Grand Hall." After saying that, Jian shirked his neck with a frightened expression, as though he had just thought of something terrifying. Zimo was greatly curious. Against that menacing malevolent ghost with torrential dharmic powers earlier on, Jian was stern without any fear. Yet, why was he revealing such an expression at the mention of the backyard? Just what was in the backyard that caused Jian such cautiousness? Furthermore, Zimo noticed something. Earlier on when he wanted to head out, Jian merely reminded him that it was dangerous outside and he should not head far away. But now, Jian was warning Zimo with extreme conviction not to head to the backyard of the Grand Hall. Zimo nodded. He truly did not wish to give Jian any troubles. After Jian gave the reminder, he returned to his praying mat and took out the thick ancient book from before, flipping it open carefully to continue reading. The little fox gradually stirred awake during this period of time. However, due to the shock that she received, she insisted on staying in Zimo's embrace and refused to go anywhere. After taking a look, Jian seemed to recall something and handed Zimo the ancient book in his hands with sincerity. Patron, if you don't know what sutra to start with, how about this? You will definitely benefit immensely. This sutra possesses the secrets of the universe, and you will gain a different realization with every new reading of it. It's truly amazing. Zimo laughed bitterly internally. Right now, he did not have any mood at all. Even if his cultivation was still present, he wouldn't be able to endure sitting through to comprehend these difficult sutras. Zimo declined. My injuries have not healed yet, so I can't exhaust myself mentally. You can read them first. Jian did not believe it entirely and asked somewhat confusedly, reading sutras, prostrating yourself to Buddha and comprehending the Tao is the most enjoyable thing in the world. How would it be exhausting mentally? Shaking his head, Jian did not seem to understand Zimo's words. When he saw Jian's passion, Zimo felt embarrassed and asked, "What's the name of that ancient book? I'll go take a look at it after you're done reading it." Of course, he had only mentioned that casually and wasn't truly curious about it. Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra. Oh, Zimo replied distractedly. The moment he turned around, his expression changed. Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra? He looked at Jian with disbelief and asked again. That's right. Jian nodded in a natural manner. Zimo's mouth dropped agape, and he froze for a moment before revealing a bitter smile. The Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra was known as the #1 secret skill for the Golden Core. In that alarming catastrophe 10,000 years ago, Fa Monastery was destroyed and the Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra was lost at that time. After all this time, nobody discovered any trace of the Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra. Therefore, a saying began to spread through the cultivation world. Everyone claimed that the Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra was buried within the Great Jian ruins. Zimo's trip towards the Great Jian ruins this time round was not entirely due to the vermilion fruit. A great part of the reason was because he wanted to find the Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra. Unfortunately, fate loved to tease. Now that he was truly able to see the Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra, he was already unable to cultivate. The legends were right. The Mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra was truly buried within the Great Jian ruins. However, who would have thought that this was buried at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley? Zimo finally realized why there was such an old, ancient, and battered temple at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. There was a high probability that this temple was built by a surviving monk of either Fa or Daming Monastery in the past. However, what was the purpose of building a temple as such at the bottom of the valley? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.